After Zhao Zichang smashed that black-clothed demon woman's head with his iron rod, she finally went down. Before dying, she warned me that some holy woman would come after me and wouldn't let me reach Huangzhou. I didn't care much. She was dead, and that's what mattered. I ordered Song Yi to handle the body as usual, search it, catalog everything, put it all in our mobile treasury. Then I rewarded Zhao Zichang with 10 taels of gold for his first kill under my banner. The big guy surprised me, though. He asked to leave his reward in the manor's treasury instead of keeping it. He'd heard the rumors that the emperor kicked me out with nothing, that I got no support, that Sima Manor had to feed us just so we wouldn't starve on the road. He figured I needed every coin I could get. I laughed hard at that. He didn't know we'd already hit a jackpot at Twin Dragon Mountain. But his loyalty meant something. I told Steward Bai to log it. Zichang could withdraw any time. That basically made him a core member, and he knew it. Then Lu Shu came kneeling before me, ashamed that his lack of skill had put me in danger. I draped my cloak over his wet shoulders and told him to cut it out, or I'd make him be little Zhao Ziying's horse. Everyone laughed. Then I reminded them all of our motto, one for all for one. United we stand, unstoppable. Every old member dropped to their knees and shouted it back. The sound carried far into the snow. The new people in our convoy looked stunned. They could feel something different about my manner, even if they couldn't name it. The old-timers were tight-knit, loyal to the bone. Smart elders among the newcomers quietly warned their families, "Keep your heads down and don't cross the veterans." Meanwhile, back in the imperial capital, the crown prince was losing his mind. Every assassin he'd sent after me was dead. He screamed for the holy woman to show herself. She appeared, a stunning beauty in red, and said she'd handle me personally. She needed to drain a man's essence to break through to her next level, and I was her target. She'd drain me first, then torture me to death. The crown prince begged her for her virginity, but she just sneered and called him too weak. Then she vanished into the night sky, leaving him screaming like a mad dog about how he wasn't weak at all. While I was on the road with my convoy, things were happening back at the imperial palace that I knew nothing about. My father, the emperor, was standing in the snow outside his study, furious at the heavens. The blizzards wouldn't stop. It was already March, when farmers should be planting, but the snow kept falling. He was worried about famine. Someone had been spreading rumors that the endless storms were heaven's punishment for his sins, and he refused to accept it. He ordered his old eunuch to investigate, and the trail led to the Zongheng School, an ancient faction that only comes out of hiding when the world is in chaos, stirring things up to prove their teachings are supreme. Then the emperor asked about me. That's when things got interesting. The old eunuch confessed that all 6 batches of spies the Imperial Guard had sent to monitor my convoy were killed by an unknown swordmaster. Every one of them cut down with a single strike from a sword style nobody recognized. The emperor was furious, but there was nothing to do except send stronger agents. When the eunuch reported that I'd wiped out the bandits on Twin Dragon Mountain, the ones the crown prince had been secretly backing, and built a skull mound from their heads, the emperor couldn't believe it. He kept asking how I pulled it off with just wounded soldiers and 2 third-rate fighters. The eunuch had no answer. The dead spies meant nobody witnessed how I did it. Then the emperor read my declaration of war against all bandits. When he hit the line, "All land under heaven belongs to the king. All people on its shores are the king's subjects," his eyes lit up. He'd never heard those words before and was deeply impressed. The old eunuch cleverly suggested I must have written it myself, but credited it to ancient sages because I don't like fame. The emperor bought it. He ordered the words sent to both prime ministers, credited to me, so they debate it publicly and spread it across the empire. He wanted the whole world to know that everything belongs to the crown, and that his son said it. By the end, the emperor was practically glowing with pride, calling me wise, brave, righteous, and proper. He even switched from calling me Little Nine to my dear Nine. The old eunuch noticed the shift and wondered, had the emperor's heart changed toward me again? Back at the palace, things were moving in ways I wouldn't learn about until later. The old eunuch told my father everything about Twin Dragon Mountain, how my convoy grew by 100 carts from the loot, how I'd wiped out the crown prince's secret base. My father did the math and figured the treasure there was worth about as much as the royal grant he'd just sent me. Then he got annoyed that I hadn't sent half the loot back to the court. as tradition required. Just like that, he went from calling me Dear Nine back to Little Nine. But the old eunuch was clever. He explained that I'd been giving away all the captured grain and money to poor villagers along the road, and that every time, I told the people it came from the emperor, not from me. I was building my father's reputation, not my own. I even carried grain sacks into homes myself, side by side with my men. The old eunuch pointed out I wasn't chasing fame or profit. I was just picking up useful people along the way, orphans and poor families willing to follow me to Huangzhou, since I desperately needed manpower. That calmed my father down completely. He even called me Dear Nine again. Then came the matter of my royal gifts. The old eunuch revealed that two men, Eunuch Gao and Vice Commander Hua Wujian, had tried to skim from my princely grants during delivery. When the emperor dragged them in for questioning, Hua Wujian immediately blamed the crown prince. My father summoned the crown prince to confront them, and the idiot walked right into the trap. Before anyone even mentioned what the crime was about, the crown prince blurted out a denial about stealing from my grants, proving he knew exactly what was going on. My father sentenced both thieves to death by slow slicing and made it public. As for the crown prince, he fined him a full year's salary and ordered him to donate 100,000 silver taels to build my manor in Huangzhou. Then he sent the crown prince back to house arrest, telling him to think about how to be a proper heir. The crown prince was so terrified during the whole thing that he wet himself. Apparently something that started happening after I scared him once before. He left the palace soaked in his own urine, consumed with hatred, swearing I had to die. He was still counting on that holy woman to finish me off. What the crown prince couldn't figure out was why our father seemed to be protecting me now. Wasn't the emperor the one who hinted he wanted me dead in the first place? Why punish people for stealing from a prince who was supposed to die anyway? Why force the crown prince to pay for my manor? The emperor's heart was impossible to read. Even the old eunuch, who'd served him for decades, couldn't tell what he truly wanted when it came to me. While I was traveling toward Huangzhou, a lot was happening in the palace that I had no idea about. Late that night, my father visited my mother, Consort Qin, at her lonely Gushan palace. She was sewing a royal robe for me by candlelight. He watched her through the window for a long time before speaking up. He asked her the same old question. Years ago, an assassin had hidden in her bedroom overnight. Did anything happen between them? My mother answered the way she always does, stubborn and fearless. She said I wasn't his son. But my father actually smiled at that. He knew she was bluffing. If I truly wasn't his blood, she'd never dare say it so boldly, because he'd kill us both without hesitation. The fact that she could say it so casually meant she was lying, which meant I really was his child. Then he dropped the real reason for his visit. He wanted to know where my mother's family, the old Qin dynasty royals, had hidden their treasure. She saw right through him. All that sweet talk about how well I was doing outside the palace, calling me Dear Nine, it was just bait to soften her up. My mother warned him. Whatever he was planning to do with me, I should be careful. She couldn't figure out his angle. He used me to punish the crown prince, find the crown prince's money to build me a manor, but 2 days ago he'd wanted me dead. What changed? Before leaving, my father took the royal robe she'd sewn for me, promising to send it along with the crown prince's forced donation. Meanwhile, Left Prime Minister Sima Jian received my declaration and was deeply impressed. He wrote a memorial to the emperor praising me, even adding those words I'd once said to him at our farewell. Establish the heart of heaven and earth, secure the destiny of the people, continue the lost teachings of the sages, open eternal peace for all generations. He called me a sage hidden in plain sight. Then he secretly sent word to his daughter Sima Lan, giving her permission to stay with my convoy all the way to Huangzhou and report everything back to him. Over at the Crown Prince's palace, things were falling apart. The Crown Prince was in a rage, whipping one of his consorts, the beautiful consort Chao, daughter of Right Prime Minister Chao Wei. Worse than his anger was his shame. He'd become impotent, and he blamed me for it. Every time I frightened him, it got worse. Consort Chao was devastated too. If she couldn't bear an heir, she'd never become crown princess or empress. She silently cursed my name alongside him. When Right Prime Minister Chao Wei arrived through a secret tunnel, the crown prince poured out all his grievances, the emperor's shifting attitude, the punishment, the money taken from my manor. He couldn't understand why our father seemed to be protecting me now after hinting I should die. Chao Wei warned him sharply, "Don't do anything foolish. The emperor's punishment is the emperor's grace. Fighting it would only make things worse." The crown prince also mentioned that the Zongheng school's holy woman had personally set out to kill me, but even he felt something was off about her. While I was heading toward Huangzhou, the people who wanted me dead were getting desperate, though I wouldn't learn the details until much later. Right, Prime Minister Chao Wei was the real power behind the crown prince. He'd helped my father seize the throne years ago, expecting to become left prime minister, the top official in the empire. But my father gave that position to Sima Jian instead, to win over the great noble families. Chao Wei never forgave that. He married his daughter to the crown prince as a concubine, became the crown prince's tutor, and spent 10 years secretly building power behind him, bribing officials, training assassins, stockpiling money. His real plan was to put the crown prince on the throne and control him like a puppet. When Chao Wei first heard my father wanted me dead, he pushed the crown prince to do the dirty work, thinking it would earn favor. But nothing went as planned. I survived the freezing punishment. I survived the assassins at Peach Blossom Fort. I destroyed Twin Dragon Mountain, the crown prince's secret treasury, and used the loot to help common people, winning hearts along the way. Every attack on me backfired, costing the crown prince men and money while I came out stronger. Now Chao Wei couldn't even read my father's intentions anymore. The emperor had gone from wanting me dead to punishing the crown prince and sending me gifts. Was my father playing a game none of them could see? Chao Wei tried to calm the crown prince down, suggesting they stop trying to kill me and focus on winning back the emperor's favor. But the crown prince had completely lost it. He was screaming, crying, begging Chao Wei to help him kill me immediately. The humiliation of wetting himself in front of the emperor, twice, and his inability to perform in bed with consort Chao had driven him to the edge of madness. He said he'd trade the throne itself just to see me dead. Consort Chao sided with her husband. Her future as empress was ruined if the crown prince stayed impotent, and she blamed me for all of it. Finally, Chao Wei gave in. He warned the crown prince that this time, he'd have to use his hidden forces, the secret power the emperor didn't know about. If they failed, the emperor's spies would discover it, and the crown prince could lose his position entirely. The crown prince didn't care. He agreed without hesitation. So Chao Wei left through a secret tunnel, wiping the crown prince's snot off his hand, his eyes burning with killing intent. He decided to handle things personally. He wanted to see for himself whether I was truly impossible to kill, and whether the bad luck that seemed to follow everyone who tried would come for him too. While I was on the road to Huangzhou, seeds I'd planted were growing in the capital without me even trying. Li Furong, that big-eyed beauty I rescued from the iron cage on Twin Dragon Mountain, had made it safely back to the capital. Her father, Duke Li, was one of the highest-ranking nobles in the empire and a powerful military general. When Li Furong told her parents everything, including that the crown prince was secretly behind the bandit operation, her father nearly grabbed a sword and stormed the crown prince's palace. His wife and daughter barely stopped him. Attacking the crown prince would mean execution for the whole family, no matter how justified. Li Furong went to the great Xianghua temple to pray for me. She drew my face from memory, and when her father confirmed the portrait matched the ninth prince, she was overjoyed. The mysterious young man who'd saved her in the mountains was me. From that moment, Duke Li made a quiet decision. He would secretly work on my behalf in the imperial court, building political alliances I never asked for. He figured that if I ever returned to the capital, I'd need supporters, and he'd make sure they were there. Meanwhile, my declaration against the bandits had spread across the entire capital. People were reading my words everywhere. All land under heaven belongs to the king, and debating whether I was actually the emperor's most outstanding son. The crown prince's reputation was terrible, and by comparison, I looked like a hero. My popularity was skyrocketing in ways I never expected. Yi Jinlian, the girl I'd saved at Tiger Mountain, was also back in the capital. She'd changed after surviving the massacre of her family. She was no longer just a governor's sheltered daughter. She'd decided to stay in the capital and quietly work to support my cause. She believed what I'd told her when we parted, that as long as I controlled Huangzhou, there'd be no bandits there, and if I ever ruled the empire, there'd be no bandits anywhere. That morning, the emperor summoned his court to hear Yi Jillian's account of her father's death. She told the truth about the Tiger Mountain bandits, but kept my rescue a secret, as I'd asked. Then she dropped a bomb. The bandit leader had mentioned the crown prince's name before dying. The court erupted. The emperor's eyes went cold. And Right Prime Minister Chow Wei nearly collapsed on the spot, because Tiger Mountain's bandits genuinely had nothing to do with the crown prince. It was the Zongheng school assassins, disguised as bandits, who'd killed everyone there. But now there was no one alive to contradict Yi Jinlian's testimony. The crown prince was getting blamed for crimes he didn't commit, on top of the ones he actually did. Chow Wei's head was spinning. Ever since the crown prince started trying to kill me, everything had gone wrong. Every scheme backfired. Every attack made things worse. And now, somehow, even crimes committed by other people were landing on the crown prince's doorstep. He was starting to wonder if I was some kind of curse. Things were happening in the imperial court that I had no clue about. Moves being made on my behalf by people I'd never even asked for help. At the morning court session, Yi Jinlian told the emperor about her father's death on Tiger Mountain. She mentioned that the bandit leader had dropped the crown prince's name, but said nothing more beyond that. It was enough to make the whole court gasp and put Chow Wei in a cold sweat. Even though Tiger Mountain's bandits actually had nothing to do with the crown prince, it was the Zongheng assassins who'd killed everyone there while disguised as bandits. The real surprise came from Duke Li. This man had a fearsome reputation. Years ago, he'd served as a censor, basically a professional troublemaker whose job was to call out anyone doing wrong, including the emperor himself. He'd once verbally destroyed all 6 ministry heads in a single debate, leaving them so humiliated they nearly hanged themselves. The emperor got so annoyed he threw Li into the military, but that backfired spectacularly. Li turned out to be a brilliant general, won every battle, and came home as a first-rank duke. Every censor in court was his student. When he pointed, they attacked like hunting dogs. Duke Li demanded a full investigation into the governor's murder. His pack of censors echoed his words in unison. The emperor, clearly remembering what a headache this man could be, immediately appointed him special investigator with an imperial sword, authority to arrest anyone, even without evidence, and execute anyone who interfered. Then Li pulled something clever. He cornered Chow Wei privately and basically blackmailed him. Give me the vacant Minister of War position, or I'll name you as the suspect behind Tiger Mountain. Chow Wei was furious but had no choice. He agreed. Why did Duke Li want that position? Because he knew Qingzhou province, which my convoy had to pass through, was crawling with Crown Prince loyalists who controlled the local military. As Minister of War, he could neutralize that threat and clear my path. A man I'd never recruited was quietly becoming my most powerful ally in the capital, reshaping the empire's military command just to keep me safe. Meanwhile, Duke Li received intelligence that the Zongheng school's holy woman had appeared in Qingzhou. He smirked and hoped I'd be careful not to lose more than my life to her. And Chow Wei? Walking out of the palace, he stared into the distance, confident his own hidden forces had also reached Qingzhou by now. He was certain I was finished this time. Everyone was converging on Qingzhou, people trying to save me and people trying to kill me, and I was just rolling along the road, completely unaware. While I was somewhere on the road to Huangzhou, a political battle was raging in my father's study, and I was at the center of it without knowing. The morning after court, the clouds finally broke and the sun came out. The strange late winter cold seemed to be ending, which was good news for the empire's farmers and poor. My father called 3 people to his study. Left Prime Minister Sima Jian, Right Prime Minister Chow Wei, and Duke Li. The reason was simple, he'd asked both prime ministers to write their thoughts on my "all land under heaven belongs to the king" declaration, and Chow Wei hadn't submitted his essay during the morning session. Chow Wei had been holding it back on purpose. His essay was a trap. He argued that since I'd always been known as a dimwit in the palace, I couldn't possibly have written those words myself. Either I'd been faking my stupidity all along, which meant I'd been deceiving the emperor for years, a crime punishable by death, or someone else wrote the words and put them in my name. And who would that be? Sima Lan, the genius girl my father had betrothed to me. And who told her to do it? Her father, Sima Jian. So all 3 of us, me, Sima Lan, and the left prime minister, were guilty of deceiving the emperor. It was a vicious move. No matter which explanation was true, I ended up guilty. My father told Sima Jian to defend himself. Instead of arguing back point by point, Sima Jian simply asked the emperor to read his own essay. In it, he'd included words I'd spoken to him at our farewell. Establish the heart of heaven and earth, secure the destiny of the people, continue the lost teachings of the sages, open eternal peace for all generations. My father's eyes lit up. Even Chao Wei was stunned. He blurted out that these were the words of a sage, a holy man. Then my father turned to him with a mocking smile and asked if he knew who said them. That's when Chao Wei's face went white. He suddenly understood. Those words came from me too. Sima Jian's defense was brilliant. If I could speak words that even the right prime minister called saintly wisdom, then clearly I wasn't faking intelligence. I was the real thing. The King's Road declaration was mine. The sage's words were mine, and there was no deception at all. Chao Wei's scheme had completely backfired. He'd set a trap for me and Sima Jian, but ended up proving to the emperor that I was even more remarkable than anyone thought. Meanwhile, Duke Li watched the whole fight with amusement, egging both prime ministers on like it was entertainment. He even offered to jump in himself. My father had to slam his fist down to restore order. But the old duke didn't care. He was already planning his next moves. He'd secured the Minister of War position to protect me in Qingzhou, and now he was watching my enemies dig their own graves in front of the emperor. Back in the palace, the three most powerful men in the empire were putting on quite a show in my father's study. All because of me. Chao Wei was cornered. My father stared him down with a mocking look, waiting for him to guess who'd spoken those saintly words. Chao Wei panicked and tried flattery, claiming the emperor himself must have said them. My father laughed, but didn't buy it. Then my father did something strange. He burned Sima Jian's essay right there in the study and made up a story that I'd met a wandering scholar on the road who'd given me both the kingly declaration and the sage's words as a gift. Therefore, I hadn't deceived anyone. I was just an honest young man sharing what a friend told me. He cleared me, Sima Jian, and Sima Lan of all charges. Nobody believed the story. Chao Wei was sure Sima Lan had written my words. Sima Jian knew my father was covering something up, but couldn't figure out why. My father even rewarded Chao Wei with gold for his loyalty, which was really just a way of telling him to shut up and move on. Then Duke Li stirred things up. He suggested both prime ministers should resign for their undignified behavior and volunteered himself as replacement. My father's headache got worse. Li even threw in a complaint about me, saying my skull mound was too scary and might frighten cats and dogs along the road. It seemed random, but it was cover for his real move. He announced that Chao Wei had recommended him for Minister of War. Chao Wei's face twisted with resentment. Li had blackmailed him into it, but he couldn't say a word. My father approved immediately, noting that the Celestial Wolf Empire was massing troops on Huangzhou's border and a legendary general was needed. After the meeting, Li privately confirmed with Sima Jian that I really had spoken those sages' words. When Sima Jian admitted it, Li could barely contain his excitement. A prince with both saintly wisdom and kingly ambition, that was someone worth following. But the most unsettling thing happened after everyone left. My father visited a secret chamber in the palace's offering hall, a dark, guarded place full of strange sounds. Inside sat a girl who looked about 12 or 13, with a beauty mark between her brows, but spoke with an ancient voice. My father told her about my words and worried I'd attracted the wrong kind of attention. They discussed something mysterious, some task or destiny, and agreed that if it fell on me, I'd almost certainly die. My father said coldly, "Then let me die." The girl called him selfish, then vanished, saying she'd go check on me herself. If I was worthy, I'd be chosen. If not, she asked whether to kill me. My father told her to use her own judgment. Meanwhile, spring finally arrived. The snow was melting on the Qingzhou road and my convoy was celebrating the warm wind. But lurking on both sides of the road, several mysterious and stunningly beautiful women had appeared, watching my white carriage, studying my silhouette. They all wanted something from me. Everyone was converging, allies, enemies, and unknowns, and I was just riding along, enjoying the first warm breeze of the season. Spring finally came. The warm wind started melting the snow, and I ordered the convoy to stop at a clearing so we could eat lunch and convert our sled carriages back to wheels. I jumped down from my carriage holding little Zhao Ziying's hand. She was pouting, telling me she didn't like that white-clothed sister because her mother once told her love can shift and she was afraid I'd stop loving her if some pretty woman showed up. I laughed and ruffled her hair. The new people in my convoy smiled too. They'd started calling me Big Brother Prince, and I think they were beginning to believe that life in Huangzhou might actually be warm and good. Zhao Zichang reported that more spies had appeared along the road, but our mysterious white-masked woman was still out there, chasing them off, as usual. She'd killed the ones sent by bandit gangs and scared away the curious ones. Her only request today? More of my cooking. She wanted oil-splashed noodles again. This woman, she called herself E.G. Mei, one branch of Plum Blossom, had shown up a few nights after Twin Dragon Mountain. I'd made 2 bowls of dumplings for myself and left them on my carriage while I tended to the wounded. When I came back, there she was, mask pulled down, devouring my food like she hadn't eaten in days. Beautiful face, terrible manners. I had Zhao Zichang test her, and they fought to a draw, meaning she was genuinely strong. But she wasn't a thief. She left behind a note listing all the spies she'd driven away from our convoy that night. After that, it became routine. I'd cook extra food, she'd appear to eat it, and she'd hand over intelligence reports on everyone lurking near us. When I invited her to travel with us for safety, she got straight to the point. She asked if I was keeping her around because I wanted her body. I said no. Then she smiled and said she wanted to be my princess consort. She claimed her background was no worse than Sima Lan's, her talent just as strong, and that the forces behind her could help me establish myself in Huangzhou. She asked me to choose between her and Sima Lan. I chose Lan without hesitation. She left looking hurt, but I caught a smile on her face as she turned away. After that, she kept following us anyway, eating my cooking and guarding the convoy from the shadows. I still didn't know who she really was. That afternoon, while I was making noodles, trouble was closing in. The Zongheng School's holy woman, that red-clothed beauty the crown prince had summoned, arrived on the road with 4 sword-wielding women. She wanted to capture me alive. But before she could attack, Iji Mei appeared right beside them, silent as a ghost. She looked at the holy woman and her squad and asked casually, "Who are you people? Why do you want to capture him? Are you planning to drag him off for a wedding night?" While I was preparing lunch, Iji Mei was fighting the Zongheng holy woman somewhere in the snow. The 2 of them were evenly matched, and both ended up badly hurt. The holy woman retreated with her followers, swearing she'd be back. Iji Mei showed up at my carriage covered in blood, wolfed down the knife-cut noodles I'd made, and told me what happened. She'd taken a hit called the Red Death Palm right on her chest, and needed to find someone called the Medical Saint's daughter to treat the internal damage. She couldn't protect my convoy anymore. I told her I knew medicine and offered to help. She was hesitant, a young man asking her to undress, but she eventually lowered her clothing enough to show me the wound. A glowing red palm print sat on her chest, oozing foul black blood. I used silver needles to seal the blood vessels around it, then cut the wound open to drain the poison. When I offered to suck the remaining toxin out with my mouth, she covered herself up, face burning red, and said she'd handle the rest herself. Before she left, she gave me a warning. My sage's words and kingly declaration had spread everywhere, and now the 100 schools of philosophy would come looking for me. She explained that human wisdom has levels: ordinary, excellent, extraordinary, sub-sage, and sage. The founders of all the great schools had only reached sub-sage level, so every school's teachings were incomplete. If the schools believed I had true sage-level wisdom, they'd want to capture me and use my mind to perfect their doctrines. Some would send beautiful women to seduce me, hoping to bear my children and bind me forever. She told me to stay disciplined and keep control of myself. Then she vanished. I asked Zhao Zichang if it was true that without internal energy, I couldn't heal injuries like hers. He confirmed it. Right then, I made a decision. I would start training in martial arts immediately. I asked Zichang to teach me. He said his master forbade passing on his techniques, but he could practice in front of me, without breaking any rules. I understood what he meant and told him he'd be rewarded for his loyalty. He asked for a good spear. I promised him one. Song Yi appeared and handed me an ancient text on sword arts. I ordered all the hidden sword youths to compile everything they'd learned from the 100 schools and bring it to me for study. Then I went into my carriage and began writing down martial arts knowledge from my past life, techniques I needed to practice in secret until I could become a true warrior. I also started military planning. I told Lu Shu and Gao Fei to select 100 young men between 12 and 18 from our new recruits. I'd train them personally starting tomorrow. Another 100 men aged 19 to 30 would train under Lu Shu and Gao Fei. Once my wounded veterans healed and the new soldiers were ready, my manor's fighting strength would shock everyone. Then the ground started shaking. Zhao Zichang's ears twitched, and he warned me. A large cavalry force was approaching fast. I ordered the convoy to halt and prepare for battle. Up ahead, a column of black-armored riders was charging straight at us like a dark bolt of lightning. Their commander was a young general who looked almost exactly like Chao Wei. He ordered his men to put on masks and attack. Kill all the men. Capture the women. And Sima Lan. He wanted her taken alive so he could make her suffer. While I was out on the road preparing for a cavalry attack, my words were shaking the entire capital, and my father was scrambling to contain the damage. My sage's declaration: establish the heart of heaven and earth, secure the destiny of the people, continue the lost teachings of the sages, open eternal peace for all generations, had somehow leaked across the city. Everyone was talking about it, and every major school of thought wanted a piece of me. At the Imperial Academy, the head of the Confucian school, Dean Kong K, was on his knees before their founder's statue, weeping with excitement. He believed I might be the prophesied sage their school had been seeking for 100 years. He was ready to chase me down the road to Huangzhou and test me personally. At the Imperial Observatory, the Taoist leader Li Si was equally thrilled. He thought I was the inner sage, outer king, his school had been waiting for, someone whose wisdom could complete their incomplete teachings. At the Chuanfang House, the capital's most famous pleasure hall, a stunning young woman named Hua Shengnan from the Hahuan school, a sect built around seduction, was plotting to sleep with me. Their founder had once bedded all 9 sub-sages and absorbed their wisdom. Now Hua Shengnan wanted to surpass that record by conquering a true sage. She wanted my mind, my body, and my help perfecting their teachings on dual cultivation. My father shut all of them down. He sent identical imperial orders to every school, forbidding anyone from leaving the capital to find me. Then he had people redirect public attention toward the fictional, wandering scholar who'd supposedly given me those words. Gradually, the buzz around my name faded. When Eunuch Wei praised him for protecting me, my father just said quietly, "I hope he'll appreciate it someday." Then he made 2 more moves. He sent word to Duke Li, now Minister of War, warning him that if any Qingzhou military units attacked my convoy, Li would lose his position. And because Li had been going around claiming to be a crown prince supporter, my father sent a separate message to Chao Wei. If Li Jian used Qingzhou troops to harm me, the emperor would execute Chao Wei's entire family. Chao Wei was completely confused when he received that order. He couldn't figure out when Duke Li had become part of the crown prince's faction. But then his face went white. He suddenly remembered that he'd already sent his own nephew, Chao Ma, with a cavalry unit to attack my convoy. He leaped up screaming, ordering an emergency pigeon message to Chao Ma. Stop the attack immediately. But it was already too late. Out on the Qingzhou road, Chao Ma had his men masked and armed, lances lowered, horses picking up speed, charging straight at my convoy. The moment of impact was seconds away. Behind Chao Ma's cavalry, a second force was racing to catch up, black-armored Qingzhou riders led by Li Fei, Duke Li's adopted son and deputy commander of the Qingzhou cavalry. He'd just received an urgent pigeon letter from his father explaining everything. How I'd save Li Furong, how Chao Ma might attack my convoy, and how Li Fei needed to stop it. The letter also warned that if anything happened to me in Qingzhou, Duke Li would punish him with military law and marry him off to the 10 ugliest women in the empire. Li Fei was whipping his horse raw, terrified, not just for me, but for his future love life. Meanwhile, I'd stopped the convoy at a place called Tiger Kill Pass, a narrow stretch of road with dense, beast-filled forest on both sides. No villages, no help, no room to maneuver. It was the perfect ambush spot, and Chao Ma knew it. When his cavalry came thundering toward us, they saw our wounded soldiers wrapped in bandages, a handful of farm boys holding weapons, and a few empty carts blocking the road. Chao Ma laughed. He thought we were helpless sheep. Sima Lan didn't flinch. When Sima Gu urged her to run, she said calmly, "Trust the prince." If he wasn't prepared, he wouldn't have let the wounded rest so peacefully. "These riders are not his match," She was right. At 30 paces, the blocking carts fell apart, and behind them stood 3 siege crossbows. These were battlefield weapons, massive things designed to punch through castle walls. Each one held 3 bolts as long as spears. 9 bolts total, aimed straight down the narrow road. Chow Ma screamed a warning, but it was too late. His cavalry was at full charge on a tight road. They couldn't stop without being impaled by the riders behind them. I gave the order. Fire! 9 bolts tore through the air. Chow Ma dodged the one aimed at him. He was skilled enough for that. But his men weren't. Each bolt punched through one rider's armor and body, then kept going through a second, a third, a fourth, before finally dropping. 9 bolts, 45 dead in an instant. Blood painted the road red. Chow Ma reached the carts and used his spear to hurl them aside along with the crossbows. Now my entire convoy lay open before him. No more barriers, no more tricks. He saw me standing under my banner in my royal robe, watching him coldly. Without hesitation, he leveled his spear and charged straight at me, the steel tip flashing toward my throat. I didn't flinch when Chow Ma's spear came for my throat. I didn't need to. Zhao Zichang appeared like a ghost, his iron rod smashing the spear tip to pieces like an egg hitting rock. Then he leaped into the air, blocking out the sun above Chow Ma's head, and brought both iron rods crashing down on the cavalry commander's skull. Chow Ma's head exploded. He was dead before he hit the ground. Zichang didn't stop. He tore into the charging cavalry like a whirlwind, smashing skulls with every swing. 1 hit, 1 kill. Within moments, he'd left a trail of bodies and riderless horses blocking the road. Then he jumped onto an enemy horse, grabbed a fallen spear, and roared, "Zhao Zichang of the Huangzhou Prince's manor is here. Who dares fight me?" He paused awkwardly and looked back at me. "Was that right, my lord?" I laughed. "Perfect. Do it every time. A general is the soul of his soldiers. When you roar, your men inherit your fighting spirit." He grinned and charged back into the enemy like an unstoppable war god. I climbed onto a cart, uncovered the war drum, and started beating the rhythm of the general's command. As the drumbeats echoed, I sang out words that had been building inside me, about being an emperor's son forced onto a dangerous road, about bandits who dared attack a prince, about my vow to first destroy every bandit and then march on the celestial wolf empire itself and shoot down their king. Zichang heard my words and wept as he fought, killing 2 men with a single thrust. Lu Shu and Gao Fei charged out behind him, forming an arrowhead formation, finishing off anyone he'd knocked down. Behind me, Sima Lan was watching quietly. When Sima Ge said it was impossible for a tiny poor province like Huangzhou to challenge the mighty wolf empire, Sima Lan simply said, "I believe he can." Sima Ge asked if she'd fallen in love with me. She smiled and didn't answer. When Zichang had killed over 100 riders and the enemy was faltering, I gave Tsang Yi the signal. Red flag waved. From the tall grass along the roadside, my hidden sword youths exploded from underground positions behind the enemy's rear, cutting down the trapped cavalry from behind. Riders without momentum are just targets on horseback. It was over quickly. Zichang rode back to me, steaming with heat and drenched in blood. I told him he'd done well. Steward Bai was practically dancing. We'd captured 1,000 warhorses and 1,000 sets of armor. I ordered the bodies collected and burned. As far as the world was concerned, this battle never happened. We never met these men. When we pulled the mask off Chow Ma's face, I wasn't surprised. Sima Lan confirmed it. He was right Prime Minister Chow Wei's younger son. His older brother Chow Bao was deputy commander of all Qingzhou cavalry. She warned me they'd come again with even more force. I told her not to worry. I had the blacksmiths working on some new surprises, and if Chow Bao came, he'd make a perfect test subject. What I didn't know was that 2 separate cavalry forces were racing toward the battlefield at that very moment, from opposite directions, for opposite reasons, both praying for the same thing. Li Fei, Duke Li's adopted son, had been chasing Chow Ma to stop the attack. When he saw a blood-covered riderless horse running back, he assumed I was dead and nearly collapsed in despair. He kept mumbling about the 10 ugly wives his father would force him to marry. Chow Bao, Chow Ma's older brother, had received an emergency pigeon from Chow Wei ordering him to stop everything. The emperor had somehow learned about the plan and threatened to execute the entire Chow family if I was harmed. Both men arrived at the battlefield at the same time. The bodies were piled up but not yet burned, the smell of blood thick in the air. And there they stood, staring at each other and at the carnage, neither knowing what had happened or what to do next. We'd just won a massive haul. 1,000 war horses, 1,000 sets of cavalry armor, 1,000 lances, 1,000 sabers. Enough to build a proper cavalry unit. This was priceless stuff. The Empire strictly controlled war equipment. No one could privately forge weapons or armor without being charged with treason. My official allowance for Huangzhou was only 500 cavalry sets. Now I had double that, and I hadn't spent a single coin. My people threw themselves into stripping the battlefield clean. Every piece of armor came off, every weapon collected, every scrap of usable clothing pulled from the dead. Even the underclothes would be washed and given to poor families along the road. I taught my people well. If you see something on the ground and don't pick it up, that's the same as throwing it away. These were folks who'd grown up poor. They understood the value of everything. The ants underground would have shaken their heads watching my people work. They left nothing behind. Then scouts reported 2 more cavalry forces approaching from opposite directions. I couldn't tell if they were enemies, but they both wore Qingzhou black armor, so I assumed the worst. I grabbed a machete and led everyone into the forest to chop trees and throw together a quick defensive camp. We got the carts and horses inside, then dragged in the remaining unstripped corpses. I wasn't about to let anyone steal our loot. A woman named Sun Sanyang, strong as an ox and twice as practical, shouted at me as the newcomers closed in. "My lord, tell Zhao Zichang to aim for their throats next time." I counted 30 sets of armor with big holes punched through them. "Those are going to be a pain to patch." I told Zichang. He heard the lady. He nodded seriously. We lined up for another fight. Zichang, Lu Shu, Gao Fei, and Song Yi around me under the banner, all covered in mud and grass. Behind us, the wounded soldiers had reopened their injuries from helping build the camp, blood seeping through their bandages. The new recruits held weapons like they'd never touched one before. And behind everyone, the women were still stripping armor off corpses like their lives depended on it. That's when both cavalry forces arrived at the same time. Qiao Bao, Qiao Ma's older brother and the real deputy commander of Qingzhou's cavalry, saw his brother's naked corpse in the pile, and his eyes turned blood red. 1,000 of his carefully trained men, dead and stripped bare. He gripped his saber and started moving toward our camp with murder in his eyes. Li Fei arrived from the other direction. When he saw that I was alive, standing under my banner in my royal robe, tears of relief streamed down his face. His virtue and his future marriage prospects were saved. But then he saw Qiao Bao drawing his weapon and heading toward me, and his expression hardened. He moved his own cavalry toward our camp too. 2 enemy forces staring each other down, with me and my ragtag crew sitting in the middle behind a fence made of freshly chopped trees. The tension was suffocating. Inside our hastily built wooden camp, Old Ghost, one of my bandaged veterans, pointed out something I'd already noticed. These 2 cavalry forces weren't working together. They hadn't communicated, hadn't merged, and were approaching separately while watching each other warily. More importantly, neither had launched a proper cavalry charge. If they wanted to attack, they'd have started accelerating 300 paces out. Something was holding them back. Zhao Zichang saw it too. "Maybe they want to kill us," he said, "but something is restraining them." I agreed. We stayed ready. Sima Lan appeared at my side and identified them. On the left was Qiao Bao, Qiao Ma's older brother, deputy commander of Qingzhou cavalry, eyes blood red with rage. On the right was Li Fei, the other deputy commander, adopted son of Duke Li, with a wild beard that made him look older than his 20 years. When Sima Lan mentioned Duke Li, something clicked. I remembered the iron cage on Twin Dragon Mountain, that big-eyed beauty named Li Furong who'd said she was a duke's daughter. Sima Lan confirmed there was only one Duke Li in the capital. Suddenly it made sense. Li Furong must have told her father everything, and now his adopted son was here. Li Fei might actually be on my side. Qiao Bao, on the other hand, was clearly the one who'd sent his brother to kill me. I had Lu Shu hang Qiao Ma's half-stripped corpse on our wall just to see how he'd react. What happened next was bizarre. Qiao Bao looked at his dead brother's body, and behind those burning eyes I could see him doing calculations. Then he forced a smile, sat up straight on his horse, and saluted me formally. Deputy Commander Cao Bao of the Qingzhou Cavalry greets the Prince of Huangzhou. You were attacked by imposters wearing our uniforms. I arrived too late to protect you. Please forgive me. His entire unit saluted behind him. I was stunned. This man's brother was hanging dead on my wall, and he was pretending not to recognize him. Something had clearly changed. Some order from above must have reached him, making it too dangerous to attack me here. Then Li Fei made his move, and it was even stranger. He rode forward, pointed his saber at my camp, and roared, Cao Bao, you've got the wrong idea. There's no prince here. These are bandits. They're the ones who killed your brother. I'm going in to wipe them out. If you want revenge, join me. His cavalry roared behind him, weapons raised. I watched this unfold with growing fascination. Li Fei was clearly trying to force Cao Bao's hand. If Cao Bao agreed to attack the bandits, he'd be attacking a royal prince, which would get his whole family executed. If he refused, he'd have to publicly protect me, which was exactly what happened. Cao Bao panicked and blocked Li Fei's path. Li Fei, how dare you? As long as I'm here, you will not touch the Prince of Huangzhou. You'll have to ride over my dead body first. So there it was. The man who'd sent his brother to murder me was now standing between me and another force, heroically defending my life. And the man who was actually on my side was playing the role of the attacker. The whole scene in front of our camp had completely flipped. Nothing was what it seemed, and I still didn't fully understand why. I watched the scene unfold and started piecing things together. Cao Bao was clearly operating under new orders. He refused to acknowledge his own brother's corpse hanging on my wall, calling it a fake, some impersonator who deserved to die. His eyes were blood red and his voice was breaking, but he held the act together. Whatever message had reached him made protecting me more important than avenging Cao Ma. He must have been told that if I died in Qingzhou, his entire family would be wiped out. Li Fei kept pushing, trying to force Cao Bao's hand. He pointed at Cao Ma's body and asked how Cao Bao could stand there without wanting revenge. Cao Bao nearly vomited blood from the emotional strain, but he held firm. Then Li Fei made his real move. He screamed that I was a bandit, ordered his men to charge, and his riders actually started cutting down Cao Bao's soldiers. Cao Bao was frantic. We're both the crown prince's men. We're on the same side. Li Fei's answer was perfect. The prince I follow and the prince you follow aren't the same person. Your family does nothing but terrible things. I'm nothing like you. Today, I'm killing you. That's when it clicked for me. Li Fei wasn't trying to hurt me at all. He was forcing Cao Bao to fight him instead of me, using Cao Bao's own orders against him. Since Cao Bao had to keep me alive at all costs, Li Fei positioned himself between us so Cao Bao's troops would form a wall, protecting me while fighting Li Fei. I turned to Sima Lan and asked what kind of man Duke Li was. She said her father considered him the last person in the empire he'd want as an enemy. That told me everything. Then Li Fei shouted across the battlefield while dueling Cao Bao. Your Highness, my father Duke Li wanted me to pass along a message. My sister Furong misses you very much. Now I knew for certain. Li Furong, the girl I'd rescued from Twin Dragon Mountain, had gone home and told her father everything. And Duke Li, one of the empire's greatest generals, had decided to back me. Without me ever asking. Cao Bao's face went white as he realized he'd been tricked. Li Fei wasn't a crown prince loyalist at all. The prince he served was me. And if Duke Li was behind this, then a legendary military mind was now working against the crown prince's faction from inside the empire. I gave the order. Kill. Zhao Zichong, Lu Shu, Gao Fei, and Song Yi burst from the camp. My hidden sword youths erupted from underground positions again, swarming into Cao Bao's cavalry. Blood flew everywhere. Behind me, Sima Lan asked softly, Who is Furong? Is she pretty? I pretended not to hear. And somewhere in the distance, standing on the treetops like something not quite human, a beautiful girl with a red mark between her eyebrows was watching everything, getting closer. While we were fighting at Tiger Kill Pass, something else was happening in the forest above us that I knew nothing about. A girl who looked about 12 or 13, with a red birthmark between her eyebrows, was gliding across the treetops like a fairy, barely touching the leaves. Her name was Qin Hongyi, nicknamed Red Demon, and she was a Grandmaster-level fighter. My father had sent her from the palace's secret offering hall to evaluate me, to see if I was worthy of some mysterious task, and to find out who was secretly protecting my convoy. Before she could reach us, A scarred man in a bamboo hat blocked her path. His face was covered in horrible scars like crawling centipedes, but he had sharp phoenix eyes and carried an ancient sword. He called himself the Faceless One. He knew things. He knew that 20 years ago, Qin Hongyi's faction had helped my father seize the throne so they could search the palace's offering hall for clues to some secret. They'd found the clues but couldn't decode them. The Faceless One refused to let her near me. He said her method of examining men always left them castrated, and he wouldn't allow that to happen to me. He told her I was the person Huangzhou's people needed, someone who'd vowed to avenge the province. Two grandmasters clashed above the forest, shattering ancient trees to dust. It was a battle the world rarely sees. Down on the ground, the fight went exactly as planned. Zhao Zichang tore through Qiao Bao's cavalry, while Li Fei's riders hit them from the other side. Qiao Bao's 1,000 men were wiped out. In the end, only Qiao Bao himself was left standing. I walked out and confronted him directly. He broke down and told me everything. The emperor had threatened to exterminate the Qiao family if I was harmed by Qingzhou troops. That's why Qiao Bao had to watch his brother's corpse hanging on my wall and pretend not to recognize it. Then Qiao Bao laid out a theory that shook everyone present. He believed my father and I were secretly working together, that the emperor was pretending to hate me while using me as bait to draw out the crown prince's supporters and destroy them one by one. Once the crown prince's faction was exposed and eliminated, my father would make me the new heir. Qiao Bao said Duke Li's sudden return to power, everything that had happened. It all fit the theory perfectly. He wasn't right. I knew that wasn't how things were. But his logic was so clean that nobody could argue against it. Even Sima Lan came to my side and looked me in the eyes. I know that's not how it is, she said quietly. I won't misunderstand you. You don't need to explain. Then Qiao Bao fell to his knees, weeping, begging me to spare him. He offered to spy for me, recruit soldiers, convince his father to switch sides, even give me his stolen concubines. I told Zichang to end it. One swing of the iron rod, and Qiao Bao's head burst open. Both of Right Prime Minister Qiao Wei's sons were now dead by my hand. We'd gained 2,000 sets of cavalry equipment total. We burned all the bodies at Tiger Kill Pass and left no evidence behind. Li Fei rode away with his men. My convoy moved on. Then, without warning, two bloody figures fell from the sky and crashed right in front of me. One was the red birthmark girl, beautiful even through her blood-soaked veil. The other was the scarred man, his phoenix eyes looking up at me with one desperate word: save me. I was trying out one of our newly captured warhorses, a magnificent pure white stallion, when two bloody figures dropped from the sky and crashed right in front of me. I yanked the reins just in time to avoid them. Zhao Zichang was instantly at my side with his iron rods raised, and Song Yi appeared with 9 hidden sword youths, their blades at the strangers' throats. These boys had been shadowing me the whole time, invisible thanks to their ancient concealment techniques. I looked up at the cliffs on both sides of the road. They were at least 10 meters from where these two had landed. People don't drift sideways that far when they fall. Something strange was going on. The scarred man, the one with the ruined face and phoenix eyes, kept coughing blood and begging me to save him. I jumped off my horse and got to work immediately. Silver needles to seal his pressure points, imperial medicine pills down his throat. When I checked his pulse, I was shocked. Even badly wounded, his heartbeat was stronger than any normal person's. His life force was unbelievable, like he had a dragon sleeping inside his body. I glanced at Zhao Zichang with a question in my eyes. He nodded. This man's body was even stronger than Zichang's, which meant he was at least a grandmaster. A grandmaster had literally fallen into my lap. He asked why I saved him first instead of the beautiful girl. I told him the truth. His injuries were more urgent. Then I examined his shattered hands and feet and had Songjio splint them. He got emotional when I told him his scarred face wasn't beyond repair. I explained the concept of reconstructive surgery, essentially giving him new skin to restore his original appearance. He nearly cried. Then he suddenly remembered the girl and screamed at me to kill her. He said she was sent to harm me, and he'd fought her across the mountain tops to protect me, resulting in their mutual destruction. I walked over to the girl, Qin Hongyi, though I didn't know her name yet. She was badly hurt too. Broken limbs, displaced organs, her smooth skin slashed everywhere by sword cuts. But even in that state, she forced a smile, trying to look charming. She claimed the opposite story, that the scarred man was my assassin and she was sent by my mother, the Grand Princess, to protect me. The mention of my mother made my eyes flash cold, but I didn't show it. She was lying. I could feel it, but I played along. I stood between them and said, "You both claim the other is here to kill me. Do either of you have proof?" Silence from both. "Then I have reason to suspect you're both assassins. Until I figure out the truth, I'll treat both your injuries equally." I had them carried to separate carts. What neither of them realized was that my silver needles had already sealed every major pressure point in their bodies. If those needles weren't removed using my specific technique, their energy centers would rupture. Two grandmasters, fighters who could each slaughter everyone in my convoy, were now completely under my control. This was a gift from heaven. I'd been desperate to study martial arts and understand how a warrior's body worked. Now I had two grandmaster-level bodies to examine and learn from. I climbed into the girl's cart with a mischievous grin, reached past her chest, and grabbed her collar. "All right, little beauty, let's get these clothes off for your treatment." Her face changed completely. My warm fingers were already touching her skin, and she could tell this might not be purely medical. She stared at me, wondering what exactly I was planning to do. Qin Hongyi stared at me with those big eyes, trying to read my intentions as I reached for her collar. I could tell she was experienced. She'd seen plenty of the world's ugliness living in the palace, and she wasn't truly afraid. She was calculating. She refused to let me undress her for treatment and asked for my apprentice Song Jiao to do it instead. I told her the girl's technique wasn't as good as mine. We went back and forth, neither of us budging. Behind the cart, I knew Sima Lan was following on horseback. Her bodyguard Sima Gu was losing her mind, convinced I was using medical treatment as an excuse to touch a beautiful woman. But Lan kept saying she trusted me. Even when Qin Hongyi raised her voice, playing the seductress, "If the prince wants to see my body so badly, I won't resist," Lan held firm. "He must have his reasons," she said. Sima Gu thought her mistress had gone crazy. Inside the cart, I played along with the flirtatious atmosphere, slowly pulling Qin Hongyi's collar apart, acting like a reckless teenage prince. She thought she had me figured out. When I leaned in close after she whispered she had a secret to tell me, she made her move, trying to gather her last wisp of internal energy to spit a chi-powered projectile through my skull. It didn't work. My silver needles had sealed everything. Her saliva had zero power behind it. And before it even left her lips, my silver knife was pressed against her mouth. "You're quite naughty," I said. "A willow branch like you doesn't interest me. There's only one woman in my heart, Sima Lan, the most beautiful and precious woman in the world to me. So save your tricks." Behind the cart, Lan heard every word. She smiled, turned her horse around, and rode back to her carriage. "Let's go." "The prince is being mischievous again," Sima Gu finally exhaled. Lan said something that stuck with me, though I didn't hear it at the time. She told Sima Gu that I carried an entire household on my shoulders at 16 years old, fighting death every day on this road, while other noble boys my age were playing with hawks and dogs. If I acted a little playful sometimes, wasn't that understandable? Inside the cart, Qin Hongyi was furious. She'd once been ranked the 10th most beautiful woman on the continent. A man had offered an entire city just to kiss her, and this teenage boy had rejected her with disgust on his face. She dropped the act completely and swore to kill me. So I dropped mine too. I questioned her directly. She admitted her name was Qin Hongyi, that she came from the palace's offering hall, and that the emperor had sent her, sort of. She said she couldn't reveal everything because the offering hall had rules, and breaking them meant death. Then she told me something fascinating. The offering hall had been secretly observing all 9 of the emperor's sons for years and reporting their findings. When they watched me in the palace, they saw someone who wasn't stupid but definitely wasn't brilliant either. Average cunning, no special talent. Their reports were why I'd gotten the reputation of being a dimwit. But after I left the capital, everything changed. She wanted to know what happened to me. Did I eat some immortal pill? Or had some powerful person sealed away my intelligence while I was in the palace, and then released the seal when I left? That last question caught my attention. Is that person, the one who could seal someone's wisdom, the one you're looking for? She nodded. Why are you looking for them? She closed her eyes and said she was bleeding out and would die before telling me anything if I didn't treat her wounds. I laughed and called her bluff. A grandmaster's body regenerates blood at incredible speed. She screamed back that my needles had sealed her energy centers, so her regeneration was shut down too. She really was dying. "What do you want from me?" she demanded. I looked her in the eyes and asked the one thing I truly needed. How does someone become a grandmaster? Qin Hongi laughed in my face when I asked how to become a grandmaster. She thought it was the stupidest question she'd ever heard. But her mockery gave me what I wanted, information. She confirmed that my body had been examined at birth by the offering hall's experts. They found that my meridians were naturally 10 times wider than normal, and my bones were unusually strong, meaning I had the potential for incredible physical power. But there was a catch. My meridians were completely blocked with natural impurities that couldn't be cleared. Internal energy couldn't flow through them. In their professional opinion, I was a martial arts cripple who could never even reach the lowest level of cultivation. She was delighted to tell me this, expecting me to despair. I didn't, because I had the I Jing Jing and Shi Sui Jing, texts from my past life specifically designed to cleanse meridians and transform the body. Those old monsters in the offering hall had no idea what was coming. I made her a deal. She wanted information about the strange man, the mysterious figure who could make smart people stupid and stupid people brilliant by beating them. I made up a story that fit. I told her someone had beaten me senseless in the palace years ago, leaving me dull-witted, and then appeared again at Peach Blossom Fort and beat me a second time, which restored my intelligence. To my shock, she believed every word. She said this matched exactly what they knew about this figure. In the old Qin dynasty, the founders of the Confucian, Taoist, and Maoist schools had all been beaten by this same person, and each had gained extraordinary wisdom afterward. She was genuinely envious of me. I'd been making it up, yet it lined up perfectly with their records. I didn't know what to make of that. Then I figured out what they really wanted from this mysterious man, the secret of immortality. Qin Hongi's face went white when I guessed it. The emperor and his offering hall grandmasters, people already sitting at the top of the world, wanted to live forever. Typical. Every emperor in history had chased that same dream, and every one of them died anyway. In exchange for my story, she gave me her grandmaster-level cultivation technique. That alone was priceless. In a world of billions, only a handful of people ever reached grandmaster level, and the secret was always the cultivation method. I told her I'd teach it to my followers too. She was surprised I'd share something so valuable, but I didn't hesitate. The stronger my people became, the stronger my manner would be. When she finally passed out from blood loss, I deliberately let her bleed until she was too weak to be dangerous. I got to work. I called Song Jiao, who'd been hiding inside the cart the whole time, invisible to the sealed grandmaster. I blindfolded myself with a handkerchief and had Song Jiao strip Qin Hongi completely to treat her wounds and test her body's meridian responses with needles. Song Jiao commented cheerfully on the woman's figure. I told her to focus. The reason I'd let Qin Hongi weaken first was simple. Even badly injured, a grandmaster with one wisp of energy could spit and blow our heads off. She'd already tried to kill me with a chi-powered saliva projectile minutes earlier. I needed her completely drained before removing any sealing needles for my research. As Song Jiao worked on the unconscious grandmaster's body under my verbal instructions, I sat with my back turned and began practicing the breathing patterns from the I Jing Jing. My martial arts journey had officially begun, with a grandmaster as my unwilling test subject. Inside the cart, with my eyes blindfolded, I directed Song Jiao through the most valuable medical experiment I'd ever conducted, mapping a grandmaster's internal energy pathways using a living subject. When Song Jiao removed the needle sealing Qin Hongi's energy center, the tiny wisp of qi left inside her immediately fought back, pushing against the needle like an angry serpent. A vein bulged across her body, tracing the exact route her energy traveled, from her dantian through the kidney, shoulder blade, celestial pivot, wind pool, and heart points, then back again in a perfect loop. We tested it twice by stimulating different pressure points. The route was identical each time. We'd just mapped a grandmaster-level cultivation path, but Song Jiao couldn't hold out against even that tiny thread of grandmaster qi. She was only a low-level warrior. Just when she was about to be overwhelmed, Zhao Zicheng pushed his iron rod through the cart's curtain and pressed it against her back, channeling his own internal energy into her. With his power behind her, she shattered the last of Qin Hongi's remaining qi. The woman spat blood and went completely limp. Song-Jio asked if we should kill her now. She was serious. This woman had come to slaughter us all, and once she recovered even a fraction of her power, nobody here could stop her. I said no. We still needed her breathing technique to complete the cultivation method. The meridian pathway was only half the puzzle. Meanwhile, I'd tested the Yi Jing breathing method on myself while sitting in the cart. Just as Qin Hongyi said, my meridians were badly blocked. Normal energy couldn't pass through them at all. But the Yi Jing was extraordinary. Its breathing technique could actually purify the impurities clogging my channels. It would take time, but the path to martial power was real. I just needed patience. To keep Qin Hongyi under control even after she recovered, I used a technique I called the exploding spirit needles, 12 silver needles arranged in an ancient formation pattern, inserted into 12 major pressure points. This sealed her dantian permanently. Even if her energy refilled completely, it couldn't escape. And if anyone tried to remove the needles without knowing the correct sequence, her chi would go berserk inside her body and she'd explode from the inside out. I told Song-Jio to clean the blood off her, dress her in fresh clothes, and feed her meat broth when she woke up. Song-Jio protested, "Why treat an enemy so well?" I told her, "Even when you're going to slaughter a pig, you fatten it up first. She's too skinny to make more than a few dumplings right now." Song-Jio pouted but obeyed. Then I went to check on the scarred man, the faceless one. As I entered his cart and started cleaning his wounds, he stared at me with an intensity that made me pause. His phoenix eyes were shining, almost tearful. "You look so much like," he murmured. "So much like. It's unbelievable." I asked the obvious question as I worked on his injuries. "Who do I look like?" I cleaned the faceless one's wounds and tried to learn more about him. When I said he looked like someone, he confirmed it. I looked like my mother. My eyes, my features, all from her. But something was wrong. When he'd first crashed in front of me, his life force had been incredible, rivaling Qin Hongyi's. Now, minutes later, his pulse was weaker than a normal person's, like a candle about to go out. His body was dying. He told me his story. He owed my mother a life debt, and she'd asked him to repay it by protecting me. Every 3 years for the past 20 years, he'd snuck into the palace just to see me from a distance. Never my mother, because he said he didn't have the face to meet her. I glanced at his ruined features and understood the double meaning. When I stripped off his shirt to treat his wounds, I was shocked. His entire body was covered in scars, layer upon layer, old and new. There was barely a patch of unmarked skin anywhere. This man had fought his way through a mountain of corpses over 20 years. He explained everything. After my father seized the throne from the Qin dynasty, my mother's family, this man had spent 2 decades hunting down every traitor who'd helped the coup and every force hiding behind them. He'd killed so many that they lived in constant terror. They'd ambushed him countless times, giving him all those scars, but he'd survived every attempt and kept killing. His voice was steel when he spoke of vengeance. The kingdom had fallen, brothers had died. Their ghosts were waiting for him to send their killers to the underworld. He couldn't stop until every debt was paid in blood, even if it meant fighting the entire world alone. I asked about his drinking. He said he couldn't sleep without getting drunk. Every time he closed his eyes, the faces of dead comrades appeared. Without alcohol, the pain in his chest felt like it was tearing him apart. He'd been drunk for 20 years straight, and the liquor kept getting weaker, or his tolerance kept growing. Nothing could numb him anymore. I promised him that once he healed, I'd brew him the strongest drink this world had ever tasted. Something truly worthy of the word liquor. He warned me that without alcohol, he'd have nightmares and might sleepwalk violently, endangering everyone around him. I smiled, lifted my silver needles, and put him to sleep with acupuncture in seconds. His eyes went wide with surprise, then closed peacefully. As I finished bandaging his wounds, I spoke to him quietly. "You've had it too hard these 20 years. Time to rest properly. Even if your body is burned out, I'll find a way to bring you back." I already had a plan. Qin Hongyi's cultivation technique could reverse aging and restore vitality. If it worked on her, it could work on him. In his prime, this man must have been among the most powerful grandmasters alive. He'd fought Qin Hongyi to a draw while his body was already failing. If I could restore his life force with her technique, he'd become stronger than ever before. I needed him. The Celestial Wolf Empire was waiting at the end of my road, full of terrifying warriors. Having a peak grandmaster at my side would change everything. So the faceless one could not die. I wouldn't allow a hero like him to fade away in some cart on a dusty road. That wasn't how his story was going to end. It was time to wake up Hongi and get the rest of her secrets. I rushed to Hongi's cart. The faceless one was dying, and her cultivation technique, the ageless rejuvenation art, was the key to saving him. She was pretending to be unconscious. I threatened to destroy her dantian with a needle if she didn't stop faking. She opened her eyes, furious. I reminded her of our deal. I'd told her about the mysterious stranger, and now she owed me her grandmaster cultivation method. She tried to back out, so I got creative with my threats. I described in vivid detail how I'd shave her head, carve words into her face, and pour mercury into her skull to peel off her skin. Behind the cart, Sima Gu was shocked at how vicious I sounded. Sima Lan just smiled and said sometimes you need thunderbolt methods to reveal a compassionate heart. The threats worked. Hongi offered a compromise. She'd give me the upper half of the technique, the breathing method, now, and the lower half, the energy circulation routes, after I healed her injuries. She thought she was being clever, holding back her leverage. What she didn't know was that while she'd been unconscious earlier, Song Jiao and I had already mapped her energy pathways by testing her body with needles. We had the lower half already. I just needed the breathing technique to complete the full method. I pretended to argue, then reluctantly agreed to her terms. She recited the entire breathing technique, a long, complex set of instructions. When I turned to leave immediately after, she was stunned. You memorized all that from hearing it once? I told her she'd just met someone with perfect memory. Her eyes went wide with horror. She started wondering if my intelligence had truly reached sage level and whether I could deduce the lower half of her technique from just the upper half alone. She decided to watch carefully for signs that anyone in my convoy was practicing the complete version. She'd never figure out the truth. By the time she'd woken up and started pretending to still be asleep, we'd already finished our research on her body. Now I had everything I needed. The complete ageless rejuvenation art would save the faceless one's life and make him stronger than ever. Combined with my Jing Jing, I had a path to martial power for myself and my followers. As I finished writing down the breathing technique, I spotted a massive city in the distance, the ancient city of Qingzhou. At its gates, a striking female general was waiting with 1,000 cavalry, watching for my convoy. Apparently, she knew me from before and was wondering whether the fool had really gotten smarter. She also carried urgent news. The 10 most notorious criminals on the continent had gathered at a bandit fortress on the road to Huangzhou, assembling 3,000 fighters to kill me. Before we reached the city, I gave Song Yi one final order. Spread the word across the entire empire that I was a martial arts cripple, completely unable to cultivate. Let the whole world believe I was physically useless. The weaker they thought I was, the bigger the surprise would be. I sent Song Yi to Sima Lan with a message. The woman from the offering hall had confirmed I was born with blocked meridians and could never practice martial arts. I wanted this information spread everywhere. Sima Lan understood immediately. She didn't even need an explanation. She told Sima Gu to use the Sima family's secret information network to spread the news across the empire. When Sima Gu asked why I'd want the whole world to know I was a martial arts cripple, Sima Lan just smiled. She said I never did anything without a reason. If future assassins believed I was just a helpless scholar, they'd underestimate me, and that would make things very entertaining. Something was changing in Sima Gu too. Along the road from the capital, she'd gone from thinking I was all talk to genuinely respecting me. She'd watched me outmaneuver assassins at Peach Blossom Fort, expose a traitor among the Sima guards, lead the assault on Twin Dragon Mountain, and stand fearless under my banner at Tiger Kill Pass, drumming the war rhythm in my royal robe. That image kept appearing in her mind. Then she asked Sima Lan something surprising. What if one day I don't want to be a death warrior anymore? As a death warrior, she was bound for life. A tool, not a person. Sima Lan told her honestly that she couldn't break those chains, but I could. If I became powerful enough, I could shatter the rules that kept her enslaved. So protecting me was the same as protecting her own future. In a world that treated women as men's playthings, their best chance at freedom was tied to my success. Sima Ge's eyes lit up. From that moment, her loyalty wasn't just duty anymore. It was personal. The two of them teased each other about marriage and the prospect of entering my household, laughing together in their cart as the last of winter's ice melted from the road. Spring had truly arrived. Up ahead, Li Fei's scouts reported that a female general had ridden out of Qingzhou City with 1,000 cavalry, apparently waiting for my convoy. She was the younger sister of the princess of Qingzhou, the wife of the Qingzhou king, my older brother. Li Fei also sent word that he'd need me to put on an act with him once we reached the city, to cover up what happened to Qiao Bao and Qiao Ma, so that Qiao Wei couldn't use it against him. I sent word back that everything would go as he expected. My people were starting to think I could predict the future. As Qingzhou City grew larger on the horizon, I sat beside the sleeping faceless one, watching the walls approach, and muttered to myself, "Qingzhou King, will you let me pass? Please don't do anything stupid." At that very moment, my brother the Qingzhou King was marching out of the city gates with his entire army. The female general, his sister-in-law, rushed up to him in alarm. "Brother-in-law, why are you bringing the army out?" He looked at her with predatory eyes and answered, "To kill someone, obviously." She went pale. "Kill who?" As my convoy approached Qingzhou City, I could see an army waiting outside the gates. This wasn't going to be easy. My eighth brother, the Qingzhou King Xiachun, had marched out with his full military force. He looked like our father, same hawk eyes, same predatory gaze. Standing beside him was a female general named Zhao Jinzi, a striking woman with painted eyebrows and little tiger teeth. She was the younger sister of his wife, from the powerful Zhao noble family. She'd actually come out to meet me, though I didn't fully understand why yet. What I learned later was that my brother had no intention of letting me pass peacefully. He'd been poisoned by a Zongheng school advisor, a flashy, fan-waving fraud named Wang Sifu who dressed in colorful robes and talked like a fortune teller. This snake had convinced my brother that he was the true dragon, destined for the throne, and that Qingzhou was his launching ground to seize the empire. Wang Sifu had even intercepted the official court document explaining that my sage words came from a friend and had nothing to do with me. He'd used it as toilet paper. Instead, he fed my brother lies from the Zongheng school's holy woman, claiming I was dangerous and needed to be captured alive so they could extract the secret of sage wisdom from me. Zhao Jinzi had tried to talk sense into my brother. She pointed out that I was being sent to the poorest, most desolate province in the empire and posed zero threat to his ambitions. She reminded him that I'd been known as a fool my entire life. She even called Wang Sifu a demon who was poisoning his mind. But my brother wouldn't listen. He'd heard the rumors about my sage declarations and kingly words. He believed I was secretly brilliant and would become a rival for the throne. In his mind, every brother was a stepping stone, and anyone with potential had to be eliminated. He told Zhao Jinzi bluntly, "In a royal family, there are no real brothers, only competitors." Zhao Jinzi was heartbroken watching her brother-in-law surrounded by yes-men and schemers with no real talent, blindly charging toward treason while believing he was destined for greatness. None of this mattered to me right then. What mattered was getting through Qingzhou alive. So as my convoy rolled up to his army, I kicked my horse into a gallop, charged straight toward my eighth brother with panic all over my face, and screamed at the top of my lungs, "Eighth brother, save me!" The Qingzhou king had brought out his entire army, over 11,000 soldiers. His official allowance was 3,000, meaning he'd secretly expanded his forces more than 3 times over. His ambition to seize the throne was obvious just from the numbers. When I saw that wall of soldiers, shields gleaming in the sunlight, I did the last thing anyone expected. Instead of running or surrendering, I kicked my horse forward and charged straight at my eighth brother, screaming for help about bandits. The entire Qingzhou army froze. This wasn't in their playbook. They'd expected me to either flee or kneel. My brother looked at his advisor in confusion. "What do we do?" Before they could react, Zhao Jinzi made her move. She led her 1,000 Zhao family cavalry out to intercept me. These riders were her sister's wedding dowry, elite soldiers loyal to the Zhao noble family, not to my brother. She blocked my path and asked where the enemy was. I recognized her from Li Fei's intelligence, the second daughter of the Zhao family, whose patriarch had served as Minister of Rights for 20 years and whose aunt was one of my father's consorts. She'd apparently met me once as a child. She told me she didn't recognize me. I said she looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. Then she reminded me. 10 years ago in the palace garden, a little girl fell near a rock formation and cried. And stupid boy, helped her up, told her she looked like a fairy, and gave her candy and his jade pendant to make her stop crying. She still had the pendant, carved with the character for heaven, my name. I remembered then. It was my mother's gift. I asked for it back. She clutched it to her chest and refused. Then she whispered urgently, my brother was planning to kill me. She told me to take her hostage and flee Qingzhou immediately. I shook my head. If I grabbed her without my brother attacking first, he'd have the perfect excuse to chase me down as a kidnapper. Her eyes went wide. You really have gotten smarter. I told her to let me pass. I'd handle my brother with a single sentence. If it didn't work, I'd offer him my head. She was skeptical but stepped aside, making me promise that if things went wrong, I'd take her hostage after all. Before I rode forward, I told her I'd remembered the garden incident. I also told her I already had a future princess, so whatever childhood promises I'd made couldn't be honored anymore. Her eyes reddened, and she looked toward my convoy, probably trying to spot Sima Lan. Then forget what you said back then, she whispered. But I never will. I rode toward my brother's position with Zhao Zicheng behind me, looking him in the eye. Eighth brother, why do you want to kill me? He was surprised I came directly to him after hearing Jinzi's warning. He called me brave. I told him I only needed one sentence. If he still wanted to fight after hearing it, I'd hand over my own head. He was curious enough to agree. Speak. Jinzi followed behind me, ears straining. She wanted to know what one sentence could possibly stop an army. And hidden in the ranks of Qingzhou soldiers, a young woman whose face resembled the Zongheng holy woman was watching me approach, hand pressed against her chest, eyes burning with hatred. I rode straight toward my eighth brother's army of 11,000 men. He only had an allowance for 3,000. The extra troops told me everything about his ambitions. We faced each other with nothing resembling brotherly warmth. I told him I knew he wanted the throne, and I had no problem with that. I even offered to support his bid against the crown prince from Huangzhou someday. I was hoping reason would work. It didn't. His flashy Zongheng advisor Wang Sifu tugged his sleeve, and my brother's expression darkened. He told me flat out, the emperor wanted me dead, and whoever killed me would earn points with the old man. Since I was going to die anyway, either by the crown prince's hand or the celestial wolf princess's, I might as well die here, quickly and painlessly. He'd kill Sima Lan too, and slaughter my entire convoy, so there'd be no witnesses. He'd sealed off the entire western gate area. No one would ever know. Zhao Jinzi charged out on her horse and blocked his path to me, sword drawn. My brother told her to get lost. She wouldn't budge until I asked her to step aside. Then Li Fei appeared with his cavalry, announcing he'd surrounded my convoy and was ready to massacre everyone on my brother's command. My brother was thrilled. He thought Li Fei was on his side. Li Fei even promised that his father Duke Li would switch allegiance to my brother once he became crown prince. My brother ate it up completely. I pointed out how stupid it was to kill me with an army in broad daylight instead of sending a quiet assassin. I told him if I died here, the emperor wouldn't forgive him. He laughed it off, convinced he'd covered his tracks. My brother mocked my convoy, the bandaged soldiers, the teenage recruits in oversized uniforms, the lack of money and manpower. He said I was the most pathetic prince on the entire continent. I didn't argue. He'd see what those pathetic people could do soon enough. Finally, I played my card. I told him there was someone in my convoy from the imperial palace, and if he saw this person and still wanted to kill me, I'd hand over my neck willingly. If he changed his mind, I'd pretend this whole encounter never happened and forget everything about his treasonous ambitions. I had Song Yi drive a cart forward. Song Jiao pulled back the curtain. Qin Hongyi's pale, beautiful face appeared. My brother nearly fell off his horse. His eyes went wide with horror, and he screamed, "No, this can't be. The offering hall is backing you." He recognized her instantly. Everyone who knew about the palace's secret offering hall understood what her presence meant. If the emperor's most mysterious and powerful servants were traveling with me, killing me would be suicide. Of course, the truth was that Qin Hongyi was my prisoner, sealed and helpless. But my brother didn't need to know that. My gamble paid off. When Qin Hongyi's face appeared, my eighth brother nearly collapsed. On the road, I'd squeezed some information out of her under threat. She'd revealed that every prince, from the crown prince down to the eighth, had been assigned a grandmaster, protector, from the offering hall at birth. Every prince except me, because my blocked meridians made me seem worthless. No one in the offering hall had bothered to choose me. Qin Hongyi herself had chosen my eighth brother, Xiaochun. That's why he recognized her instantly. Song Jiao held a hidden needle against Qin Hongyi's back, ready to destroy her dantian if she went off script. The old demoness hated every second of it, but she had no choice. My exploding spirit needles had her completely sealed. She couldn't use qi, couldn't cultivate, couldn't even function beyond a normal person. She tried removing the needles herself, but kept hearing my warning echo in her head. Pull them in the wrong order, and your body explodes. So when she called out, "Little Chunny," to my brother, he immediately bowed with full respect. His entire army bowed behind him. Even that ridiculous advisor Wang Sifu dropped to his knees. Zhao Zhenzi had to cover her mouth to stop laughing at the nickname. My brother was horrified at her injuries. He offered to mobilize his entire army to avenge her. She waved him off and said it was just a scratch, while sitting there with broken limbs, unable to hold herself upright without Song Jiao's support. Then came the critical question: why was his protector traveling with me? I fed him a story. Qin Hongyi was escorting me to Huangzhou, and in exchange, I would support his bid for the throne from my remote province. I told him I was the only prince without backing, so I'd never compete for the crown. With his protector vouching for the arrangement, he'd gain a loyal ally at no cost. He bought it. He laughed at my ragged convoy, the bandaged soldiers, the teenage recruits drowning in oversized uniforms, and called me the most pathetic prince on the continent. He told me everything terrible about Huangzhou, the exiled criminals who'd hate me on sight, the cannibal tribes in the mountains, the celestial wolf army that would enslave me. He was certain I'd die there. I didn't flinch at any of it. I just smiled and said the emperor ordered me there, so I'd go regardless. Finally, feeling generous and superior, he agreed to let me pass. He even told me I could use his name if I needed help, as long as I supported his future coup. Behind me, Zhao Zichang grinned. We were both thinking the same thing. We'd absolutely use his name. For every dirty scheme we needed to pin on someone else, the Qingzhou king had just volunteered to carry our black pots. Zhao Zichang also noticed something I'd have to deal with. Later, a small soldier in my brother's army who was clearly a woman in disguise, constantly pressing her hand against her chest, watching me with hatred before melting back into the ranks. He mentally noted that next time they met, he'd deal with whatever weapon she was hiding in her chest. As my convoy rolled past the city into the darkness, Zhao Zhenzi rode up one last time. She slipped a note into my hand, her fingertip tracing across my palm, her eyes full of reluctance. Then she wheeled her horse and rode back to the city. Late that night, after everyone else had settled, Li Fei led a group of soldiers out of Qingzhou City with several large carts, quietly moving something into position. Whatever he was doing, it would shake the entire empire by morning. After I left Qingzhou City, my plans started falling into place behind me like dominoes. Inside the Qingzhou king's palace, Wang Sifu, that flashy Zongheng advisor, was already scheming again. He'd been scolded by his holy woman superior for failing to get my brother to kill me, and he was pushing my brother to send the 10 great villains after me. These were 10 ultra-elite fighters from something called the Bandit School, not one of the official 100 schools, but a powerful underground network that considered all bandits family. Since I'd declared war on bandits everywhere, they already wanted me dead. Wang Sifu had simply pointed them in my direction. My brother agreed eagerly, convinced that with Qin Hongyi badly wounded, nobody in my convoy could stop 10 super first-class fighters. What neither of them knew was that a black-armored officer standing in the corner of the throne room was Li Fei's man, listening to every word and confirming everything was going exactly as I predicted. The bandits gathering on my route had needed my brother's permission to operate in Qingzhou territory. Now we had proof of his involvement. Then Li Fei delivered the killing blow. He sent my brother a letter that said, "The Zongheng holy woman works for the crown prince. She sent their best people to help the crown prince, and sent you a nobody named Wang Sifu." Think about what that means. My brother exploded with rage. He'd been played. The Zongheng school had given their real power to the crown prince while feeding him a low-ranking con man. He threw Wang Sifu into the dungeon for interrogation, convinced the entire Zongheng school had been plotting against him. With the Zongheng advisor removed, Li Fei became my brother's most trusted man. My brother handed him control of Qingzhou's military defenses and approved whatever plan Li Fei had proposed. The black-armored officer, Li Fei's spy, left the palace practically glowing. With Li Fei controlling Qingzhou's military, the road between Huangzhou and the capital would be completely open for me from now on. Every move I'd made since entering Qingzhou had been strategic, and they were all paying off. Meanwhile, my brother's scouts counted my convoy's horses and confirmed I now had over 2,000 war horses, clearly taken from the Chao brothers' cavalry. My brother wanted them back, but was too afraid of Qin Hongi to try anything. He just cursed my luck and figured I'd die in Huangzhou anyway. That same night, Li Fei executed the final part of our scheme. He hauled the stripped bodies of Chao Bao and Chao Ma's dead cavalry to the base of Qingzhou's western wall. Then he arranged his own soldiers around the area with torches. When the Zongheng holy woman and her 4 attendants leaped down from the city wall to chase after my convoy under cover of darkness, they landed right on top of the pile of half-naked corpses. Before they could react, torches blazed to life in a circle around them. Li Fei stood at the center of his cavalry and announced coldly, "You killed my fellow deputy commander Chao Bao. Where do you think you're going?" The holy woman was completely confused. She hadn't killed anyone. But that didn't matter. The evidence was arranged, the witnesses were in place, and Li Fei had just pinned 2,000 deaths on the Zongheng school. By morning, the entire empire would hear the story. The Zongheng holy woman murdered 2,000 Qingzhou cavalry soldiers, including the sons of Right Prime Minister Chao Wei. And my brother, already furious at the Zongheng school for deceiving him, would believe every word. I rode on through the night toward Huangzhou, leaving chaos in my wake without lifting a finger. Everything in Qingzhou went exactly as planned, though I only learned the details later. Li Fei sprung the trap perfectly. When the Zongheng holy woman and her 4 attendants leaped down from the city wall that night to chase after my convoy, they landed right on top of a pile of stripped corpses, the Chao brothers' dead cavalry, arranged at the base of the wall. Torches blazed to life around them. Li Fei rode up and publicly accused her of poisoning Deputy Commander Chao Bao, his brother Chao Ma, and 2,000 Qingzhou cavalry soldiers. The holy woman was completely lost. She hadn't killed anyone. She screamed for Wang Sifu, but he was already rotting in my brother's dungeon. She fought Li Fei to a standstill. She was slightly stronger, but her old chest wound from fighting Yi Mei kept reopening, evening things out. Li Fei's soldiers cut down her 4 attendants, then deliberately let her escape into the forest. They needed her alive and on the run. A fugitive was more useful than a corpse. Then came the brilliant part. Li Fei's riders didn't chase her into the woods. Instead, they galloped through every street in Qingzhou City, announcing that the Zongheng holy woman had murdered 2,000 soldiers with poison. They offered 1,000 gold taels for her head. The city erupted. Constables dragged in the Zongheng-connected storytellers who'd been spreading propaganda for my brother. Archers shot down suspicious martial artists trying to flee. The entire Zongheng network in Qingzhou was dismantled in a single night. A rider carrying an official battle report, 2,000 soldiers poisoned by the Zongheng holy woman, bodies burned to prevent contamination, raced toward the capital. Whether anyone in the capital believed it didn't matter. The bodies were already ash. No evidence to examine. My brother was delighted. He gave Li Fei full control of Qingzhou's military defenses and even petitioned the court to make him the new Qingzhou governor. With Li Fei's father Duke Li running the Ministry of War, the appointment was practically guaranteed. My brother thought he was building his power base. In reality, he was handing his entire military to my ally. The Zongheng holy woman fled through the forest, consumed with rage and confusion. Every attempt to kill me had ended in disaster. Her 3 top assassins, dead. Her elite killers, dead. She'd been wounded by Yi Mei before even reaching me. Now Wang Sifu was imprisoned, her attendants were slaughtered, and she was a wanted fugitive framed for mass murder. She was starting to believe I was genuinely cursed, that anyone who tried to harm me would suffer catastrophic misfortune. At a roadside relay station that night, I read the note Zhao Junzi had slipped into my hand. In neat handwriting, she warned me that the 10 most notorious criminals on the continent had gathered ahead with 3,000 bandits, swearing to kill me. She begged me to come back to Qingzhou, where she could protect me. Zhao Zichang asked what I wanted to do about the 10 villains. I told him we'd kill them all, of course. I declared war on every bandit in the empire. I wasn't about to back down now. We had 10 days before reaching their fortress, and that was plenty of time to prepare. I stepped out of my carriage and looked up at the dark sky. The Qingzhou situation was settled. Li Fei controlled the military, Wang Sifu was in prison, the Zongheng network was shattered, and my brother was unwittingly serving my interests while thinking he was building his own empire. Huangzhou was getting closer every day. I wondered what it would be like. This lawless wasteland of exiled criminals, mountain cannibals, and foreign invaders that everyone said would swallow me whole. Will you really eat me alive? I whispered to the darkness. I intended to find out. That night, with the moon casting soft light over everything, I cooked a bowl of oil-splashed noodles with meat and a fried egg, loaded it with green onions, and brought it to the Faceless One's cart. He was sleeping deeply, drool running down his chin. It was probably the best sleep he'd had in 20 years. I pulled out the acupuncture needles from his head, and the smell of food snapped him awake instantly. When I tried to feed him, his hands and feet were still broken. He refused. He said a prince shouldn't serve a broken old man. I told him he was a patient and I was his doctor. He said I was royalty. I said his master was my mother, so he was my elder. We argued back and forth until I finally won by simply refusing to put the bowl down. He devoured the whole thing in seconds and leaned back with a satisfied sigh. Happiness, I told him, is what people feel when they eat. And the feeling after eating your fill, that's comfort. Then I showed him the handwritten copy of the ageless rejuvenation art. His eyes lit up when he recognized it as Qin Hongyi's most guarded technique. He asked how I'd gotten it. She wouldn't even teach it to her own students. I just smiled and told him not to worry about that. He studied it page by page while I sat cross-legged, quietly practicing my I Jing Jing breathing exercises, slowly clearing the blockages in my meridians. A few more days, and I'd be ready to truly begin cultivating. When he finished reading, his face broke into a rare smile. The technique was complete and could restore his vitality. But there was a complication. To avoid his existing Azura sword Qi clashing with the new method, he'd need to seal away his current power and his Grandmaster cultivation, starting over from scratch. I told him not to worry. With Zhao Zicheng around, we could handle anything below Grandmaster level. He agreed and made me a promise. He'd cultivate this new technique and protect me for another 20 years. And after 20 years, I asked. He smiled. Unless you find some miracle medicine or an even better life-extending technique. I asked the question that mattered most. If he mastered the ageless rejuvenation art and eventually returned to Grandmaster level while still possessing his Azura sword technique, 2 Grandmaster level methods in one body, would he be unbeatable? He blinked. Yes. I clenched my fist tight. That was the answer I needed. Then I told him about Qin Hongyi's search for the mysterious stranger who could make people smarter by hitting them. He'd been the one blocking her from reaching me, so he clearly knew something. His expression turned serious. Have you ever heard of the Jixia Academy? He asked the question and let it hang in the air. I waited for him to continue, sensing that whatever came next would change my understanding of this world entirely. The Faceless One asked if I'd ever heard of the Jixia Academy. The name hit me like a lightning bolt, because in my previous life in China, there had also been a Jixia Academy. Was this a coincidence, or was there a deeper connection between my old world and this one? I told him I'd spent over 10 years reading in the palace library and never once encountered that name. He said that was deliberate. Someone had erased the Jixia Academy from all records. Then he told me the full story. Before the Qin dynasty unified the continent, 9 kingdoms were at war. During that chaos, a mysterious stranger walked into the Shu Kingdom's palace and told the king he wanted to open people's minds and share knowledge with the world. The king built the Jixia Academy for him. This stranger knew everything. People called him the strange teacher. Scholars from every school of thought flocked to the academy to hear him lecture and debate solutions for the world's problems, what history would call the 100 schools of thought. Every king wanted to recruit him, but he refused to take sides in politics. He only wanted to teach. The kings decided that if they couldn't use him, they'd destroy him. 8 kingdoms sent their top fighters, including multiple grandmasters, to assassinate him. The Shu Kingdom's defenders were overwhelmed and killed. But when the assassins charged into the academy itself, they simply vanished. Every single one. The academy swallowed them like a black hole. My own Qin ancestors had been smart enough to send only a few first-rate fighters instead of their grandmasters, which is why they preserved enough strength to eventually conquer all 9 kingdoms. Here was the part that fascinated me most. The strange teacher had a habit of hitting talented students on the head with bamboo scrolls. The harder they struggled with his teachings, the harder he'd hit. Everyone assumed these students would be beaten senseless. Instead, every student he struck eventually achieved a breakthrough. They'd suddenly understand everything, create their own school of thought, and become founders of entire philosophical traditions. The Confucian, Taoist, Mahist, and agricultural school founders had all been hit by him. After that, a legend spread. The strange teacher could upgrade human intelligence by hitting people's heads. Soon, enormous crowds descended on the academy, all sticking their heads out begging to be smacked. The flood of people was worse than the assassins. The academy had to close. On the night it shut down, a fire burned the entire place to the ground. The strange teacher vanished. The school founders all claimed they'd seen him ascend into the sky like an immortal. My ancestor, the first Qin emperor, didn't believe it. He captured the surviving founders and tortured them for information, then ordered the academy ruins excavated. Beneath the rubble, they found an ancient underground palace with 4 characters on its door that nobody could read. Except the founders recognized the handwriting as the strange teacher's. For 100 years, the imprisoned scholars tried to open that door and failed. They concluded that only someone with true sage-level wisdom could break through. Meanwhile, the emperor ordered every book mentioning the Jixiao Academy destroyed and all traces of its existence erased from history. Now I understood everything. When my words about the sage's path and the king's way spread across the empire, the offering hall believed I might possess sage-level intelligence. Qin Hongi had been sent to test me. If I truly had a sage's wisdom, they'd capture me to crack open that underground door. If I didn't, they'd simply kill me. The emperor, the offering hall, the 100 schools, they were all chasing the same thing. Whatever was behind that door. Immortality? Ultimate power? The strange teacher's secrets? I asked the question that mattered. Where is the Jixiao Academy? The Faceless One dropped the biggest revelation yet. The Jixiao Academy's underground palace was directly beneath the Imperial Palace, with the entrance inside the offering hall. My ancestor, the first Qin emperor, had moved the entire capital to that location just to sit on top of it. He'd built the palace right over the ruins. For 100 years, the imprisoned scholars of the 100 schools had tried to open the underground door and failed. They'd made progress. They were just one step short. But that final step required true sage-level wisdom. This was why my father had helped the offering hall's people and why they'd helped him seize the throne. Both sides wanted access to whatever was behind that door. The Faceless One finally revealed his identity. His surname was Bai, from one of the great military families that had served my mother's Qin dynasty. That explained why my mother had sheltered him 17 years ago when he'd been cornered in the palace during a spying mission. He'd hidden under her bed while she covered for him. I made him swear, again, that nothing had happened between them. He swore on the heavens. I asked about the Hidden Dragon Society, the secret organization that had trained the Hidden Sword Warriors and sent them to protect me. Was he the one running it? He said no, and I believed him. The man had spent 20 years either killing enemies or being hunted. He had no time to manage anything, let alone teach young warriors the 100 schools' teachings. Song Yi confirmed that their master, the society's leader, was a woman who always wore a black cloak covering her entire body. They'd never seen her face or learned her name. The mystery deepened. We discussed the 100 schools' martial arts. The Faceless One explained that during the age of warring kingdoms, the founders of each school needed fighting skills just to survive traveling between nations. Those who couldn't fight were killed by bandits on the road, which is why over 1,000 schools were reduced to about 100. The survivors were all brilliant philosophers and powerful warriors. I told Song Yi he'd learned the greatest forging techniques in the world once we reached Huangzhou. His eyes lit up. The Faceless One warned me to always be careful of the offering hall. They wouldn't give up on me. I told him my plan. I'd kept Qin Hongi alive precisely to avoid provoking the offering hall into sending someone worse. By showing her publicly in Qingzhou, word would reach the palace that she was traveling with me, which should buy time. Once I'd established myself in Huangzhou, I'd be strong enough to deal with whatever came next. Then he said something that stuck with me. If you ever take control of the capital, try to solve the mystery of that underground palace. I'm curious too, what's really inside? And was the strange teacher truly from that place? I told him I was just as curious. Someday, I'd open that door. After our talk, I performed reconstructive surgery on his face, the first step toward restoring his original appearance. It would take time, but I'd promised him, and I keep my promises. Later, Song Yi brought troubling news from Li Fei's latest pigeon message. At the bandit fortress ahead, beyond the 10 great villains, a mysterious woman in a black cloak had appeared. She defeated all 10 of them single-handedly and sworn to kill me. Another woman trying to kill me. Song Yi asked if I had some kind of natural ability to attract female enemies. I honestly wasn't sure he was wrong. Before dawn, I had my blacksmith's new copper bugle blow reveille. 3 blasts to wake the entire convoy. Nobody in this world had ever heard a military bugle before. I'd also introduced taps the night before for lights out. Qin Hongi thought it was pointless. She didn't understand what military discipline meant. My people rose happily and cooked meat porridge with millet and salt. Most of them had come from lives where they ate once every 3 days. Now they had 3 meals daily with meat. They were starting to understand that following me meant a real chance at a decent life. In her cart, Qin Hongi was miserable. Song Jiao fed her porridge and called her old demoness. When Qin Hongi snapped at her, Song Jiao simply walked away with the remaining food, reminding her she was a prisoner with no right to complain. The mighty Grandmaster had to swallow her pride and apologize just to finish her breakfast. She silently swore revenge on every person in my convoy who'd seen her humiliated. But first she needed to eat and recover her strength. As the sun rose, I stripped to the waist and led the entire fighting force on a 5-kilometer run along the road. 400 men ran behind me. Song Yi, Zhao Zichong, Lu Shu, and Gao Fei first, then the 100 hidden sword youths, then 100 teenage recruits, then 200 adult recruits. Everyone shirtless, steaming with sweat in the morning air. Here was the key part. While running, I taught them the breathing technique from the ageless rejuvenation art. I called out the rhythm openly. Inhale, exhale, 3 quick breaths, 3 short releases, repeat. Everyone followed along, not knowing they were practicing a grandmaster-level cultivation method that Qin Hongi had guarded her entire life. When she heard her precious secret technique being shouted across the countryside to a bunch of farm boys and orphans, she nearly lost her mind. She wept with rage in her cart, swearing she'd hate me for 10,000 years. Song Jiao grinned, barely containing herself. If the old demoness knew we already had the complete technique, upper and lower halves both, she really might explode. After the run, I lined everyone up on both sides of the road and tried to teach them basic military posture. The hidden sword youths stood ramrod straight, but the new recruits were a sloppy mess. I didn't get angry. Turning civilians into elite soldiers takes time, a painful process. I stood at attention myself, showing them the proper stance, and spoke plainly. 3,000 bandits were waiting ahead to kill us. They'd murder our families, take everything we had, and stack our heads into a mound to show the world that bandits ruled. The court wouldn't send soldiers to help. We were on our own. Train hard in peacetime, bleed less in battle, I told them. I'll train alongside you and fight beside you. Will you stand with me? The hidden sword youths roared with killing intent. Wipe out every bandit under heaven. The new recruits' eyes went red. They'd just found the first real happiness of their lives in my convoy. Hot food, safety, purpose. They weren't going to let anyone take that away. The sloppy formation suddenly had an edge to it, a raw killing intent that hadn't been there moments before. It was a start. I stood at attention on the roadside, body straight as a sword, eyes burning with intensity. Every man in formation felt it. This was the standard I was setting, the posture of a Huangzhou soldier. I handed out 3 handwritten manuals I'd prepared, the Huangzhou Army Drill Regulations, the Huangzhou Army Discipline Code, and the Huangzhou Army Internal Affairs Code. When Zhao Zichong accidentally opened the discipline manual and read the first line, "A soldier's highest duty is to obey orders," he dropped to one knee immediately. My lord, this single sentence could forge an invincible army. This is a peerless military treatise. Please take it back. Just tell us what to do, and we'll follow. Every officer knelt with him, begging me to keep the manual secret. They understood instantly what these texts meant. An army where every soldier obeyed without hesitation, where commands flowed like thought to fingertip. That was an unstoppable force. I told them to stand up. Yes, the manuals were precious, but knowing and doing are different things. Building an army by these principles requires enormous resources, dedication, and an iron will. Only Huangzhou could pull it off, because only I would invest what it took. When they rose, I saw something new in their eyes. Not just loyalty, admiration. The way students look at a teacher who's shown them something that changes everything. I ordered an hour of standing at attention. The hidden sword youths were perfect. The new recruits wobbled, cried, stared until their eyes burned. It didn't matter. This was day one. In his cart, the faceless one had sealed away his old cultivation and begun practicing the ageless rejuvenation art. Fresh chi was already flowing through him, repairing his broken body. When he glanced outside and saw my soldiers standing motionless like statues, he recognized immediately what I was doing, correcting their posture, building willpower, forging discipline. He'd once been a legendary general himself, and he'd never seen anything like it on this continent. He closed his eyes and returned to cultivation with renewed urgency. A prince with this kind of wisdom would attract powerful enemies. He needed to become invincible again, fast. Qin Hongyi, of course, mocked everything from her cart. She laughed at the soldiers standing still, called them wooden poles, said my new recruits would crumble at the first real fight. Then she tried to tempt Song Jiao, offering to take her as a personal disciple in the longevity school if she'd remove the sealing needles. Song Jiao nearly stabbed her, but held back. She knew something the old demonists didn't. Those useless, wounded soldiers in the back carts already had the complete ageless rejuvenation art and were cultivating it right now. Soon, Qin Hongyi's most guarded secret would be standard training for every soldier in my army. In the medical carts, Old Ghost, the veteran who'd been advising me since the beginning, watched me training shirtless alongside the recruits and told his comrades, "Remember this boy. He's our king. Forever." The wounded soldiers nodded silently and closed their eyes, pushing their cultivation harder. They wanted to recover before the bandit battle. They wanted to fight for me. Then Li Fei's scout arrived with troubling intelligence. The 3,000 bandits waiting ahead weren't ordinary criminals. They were battle-hardened veterans from real wars, with combat strength matching the Empire's most elite troops. Where they'd come from was still unknown. This wasn't going to be a simple bandit hunt. Someone had assembled a professional army and pointed it at me. As our convoy rolled past, the families on the carts saw their husbands and sons standing shirtless in formation beside me. The reaction was electric. An old man remembered a word I'd taught Steward Bai, jiao, meaning, keep going, you can do it. Within seconds, the entire convoy was chanting it. A pretty young wife shouted at her husband that if he couldn't keep up with training, she wouldn't let him into her bed when they reached Huangzhou. Everyone roared with laughter. An old woman teased her, suggesting she really wanted me in her bed instead. The wife's face turned red as she threatened to rip the old woman's mouth off. But underneath the laughter, something powerful was happening. My recruits had been trembling, drenched in sweat, eyes burning, on the edge of collapse after standing at attention for an hour. When they heard their families cheering, they locked up again. They couldn't fall in front of me, but they absolutely refused to fall in front of their own people. Their willpower jumped another level in that moment. In her carriage, Sima Lan noticed what I'd done and smiled. She told Sima Gu that I had a talent for choosing the right people. Every family I'd recruited was poor but proud, exactly the kind of people who'd fight hardest for a better life. When Sima Gu asked what my secret for reading people was, Lan teased her and said just 5 words: warmth, goodness, respect, thrift, humility. Sima Gu didn't understand, and Lan told her she'd see the full picture when the Confucian scholars came looking for me. After the full hour of standing, I called a halt. Half the recruits collapsed on the spot, gasping for air. Standing still hurts far more than running. Every muscle screaming, every joint locked, no relief. But they'd made it. I ordered the officers to get everyone moving again. Chase the convoy, put on uniforms, grab spears, and start practicing thrusting drills on wooden balls hung from the backs of the moving carts. Training while marching. No wasted time. As we ran, the recruits noticed something strange. Even though their bodies were exhausted, The breathing technique I'd taught them during the morning run was restoring their energy as they went. They didn't know they were practicing a grandmaster-level cultivation method. They just knew it felt magical. Meanwhile, I was running alongside them, quietly working my Jing breathing to clear my own blocked meridians. The impurities were dissolving faster than I'd expected. 4 or 5 more days and my channels would be completely clean. Then the whole world's martial arts cripple would start cultivating for real. But first, the bandit fortress and its 3,000 veteran fighters were waiting. Every drill, every hour of standing, every mile of running was preparation for that battle. I hung wooden balls, each the size of an egg, from the back of 100 carts, and had 4 soldiers per cart practice thrusting at them with spears while jogging. The balls swung unpredictably, making them nearly impossible to hit. I told my men the old saying, a month to learn the staff, a year for the saber, a lifetime for the spear. We didn't have a lifetime, so we'd master just one move, the thrust. Fast, fierce, and accurate. I demonstrated first, driving my spear straight through the center of a swinging ball. My body felt perfect for martial arts. The irony of being called a cripple wasn't lost on me. The hidden sword youths hit their targets easily. The new recruits missed everything. That was expected. I appointed Zhao Zichang as chief spear instructor and spread the hidden sword fighters across all the training groups as mentors. Qin Hongyi laughed from her card, calling it the random nonsense method of training. When Song Jiu pointed out that every soldier was practicing her ageless rejuvenation breathing technique while they drilled, the old demoness nearly choked with rage. Her most treasured cultivation secret had become basic training for farm boys. She tried to console herself by reminding Song Jiu that I only had the upper half of her technique, so they couldn't kill her. She needed to believe she still had leverage. Song Jiu just shook her head quietly. The Faceless One and all 100 wounded veterans were already cultivating the complete version. The new recruits only learned the upper half, not because we didn't have the rest, but because I wouldn't share the full method until I was certain of their loyalty. Everything Qin Hongyi could see from her card was exactly what I wanted her to see. Nothing more. Day after day, the training continued as we marched. Slowly, the changes became visible. Backs straightened, eyes hardened, footsteps synchronized until the ground shook beneath them. Breathing grew long and steady. Soldiers could run farther without tiring. Spear accuracy climbed from 1 hit in 5, to 2, to 3, to 4, until every thrust found its mark. In the medical carts, the wounded veterans' recovery accelerated dramatically. The ageless rejuvenation art was generating powerful life force inside them, healing injuries that should have taken months. Old Ghost was nearly back on his feet. Meanwhile, I kept running alongside my men every day, secretly practicing my Jing to clear my meridians. Almost there. As the days passed, we approached the border between Qingzhou and Huangzhou, Tianmen Mountain. Sitting atop, it was the largest bandit fortress on the continent, Tianmen Stronghold. Inside, a mysterious woman in a black cloak occupied the chief's throne, flanked by the 10 most notorious criminals alive. Below the walls, 3,000 hardened fighters stood in battle formation, waiting to kill us. They wanted to turn me into a joke, proof that a boy prince who declared war on bandits was nothing but empty words. They wanted the world to know that outlaws could kill royalty and walk free. The killing intent rolling down from that mountain was so thick it turned the warm spring breeze cold. We kept marching toward it. While I was marching toward Tianmen Mountain, my father was catching up on half a month's worth of intelligence about me in his study. Eunuch Wei had been saving up a thick stack of reports. My father pretended he didn't care, then immediately asked for them. He couldn't understand why Qin Hongyi hadn't sent any messages back. She should have caught up to me long ago. When he read that she'd appeared in my convoy badly wounded and unable to move, his eyes narrowed. Who on this continent could hurt her that badly? He asked Eunuch Wei, himself a grandmaster, if he could beat her. Wei said the best he could manage was a draw. Then my father asked a question that made Wei break out in cold sweat. Could the emperor learn his cultivation technique? Wei's method was called the Heartless Desire-Severing Divine Art, and its opening line was, "Empty your heart of women, and the technique will succeed. Cut off the root of trouble, and the heartless path is born." In other words, it required castration. My father quickly decided he didn't want it after all. The intelligence reports told a story that fit neatly together, though not the real story. The official version reaching the palace was that the Zongheng holy woman had poisoned Qiao Bao, Qiao Ma, and 2,000 cavalry outside Qingzhou city after the Zongheng school turned against the crown prince. My father accepted this explanation and ordered a nationwide hunt for all Zongheng members. Then Duke Li arrived at the study, playing his role perfectly. He reported that all the urgent dispatches from Qingzhou had been intercepted on the road, which explained the delay. He suggested that the Zongheng school's mysterious elder must be responsible for both injuring Qin Hongyi and killing the Qiao brothers' forces. He even claimed sword marks matching the elder's style were found on the bodies. My father bought it completely. He ordered the Ministry of Justice to issue a nationwide arrest warrant for the entire Zongheng school and told Duke Li to mobilize the military if the elder was found. The two men, Wei and Li, exchanged a meaningful glance as they left the study. Both were working toward the same goal now, though my father didn't realize they were also working for me. My father stood at his door afterward, staring into the night. He assumed Qin Hongyi was still pursuing her mission despite being wounded. That was her style, never giving up. He decided to wait patiently for her report. Then he sighed about having to deal with Qiao Wei, who'd just lost both sons and would surely be going insane with grief. Meanwhile, I was riding at the head of my convoy, watching Tianmen Mountain grow larger against the dark sky. Half a month of training had transformed my people. The new soldiers could hit their targets, march in step, and breathe with cultivators' lungs. The wounded veterans were nearly healed. My meridians were almost clear. I gave the order. Execute the plan. The hidden sword youths vanished into the darkness. My convoy lit torches, transforming into a long dragon of fire snaking through the midnight toward the mountain fortress. Dark night. High wind. A perfect night for killing. Back in the capital, Qiao Wei received the news that both his sons were dead. He vomited blood and screamed to the heavens. Then he swore a bizarre oath that if he didn't avenge them, he'd let their mother die horribly. Even Eunuch Wei found that disturbing and quickly excused himself. In his secret room, Qiao Wei wept and raged. He couldn't understand why the Zongheng school would kill his sons. He'd already sent the order to stop the attack on me. It arrived too late. He summoned a ghost-like figure in black and sent him to Qingzhou to investigate what really happened. Then, in a display of mourning that was uniquely his, he went to comfort his dead son's beautiful concubine. He convinced himself that grief was best cured by pleasure and ordered the terrified woman to undress. Even in the middle of his twisted grieving session, he screamed my name, swearing I'd die at Tianmen Mountain. Meanwhile, my convoy was racing through the night toward that very mountain. We'd lit torches, transforming the column into a long fire dragon snaking through the darkness. I wanted to push through as fast as possible. Qin Hongyi was fully awake in her cart, taunting Song Jiao about our chances. She said Tianmen Stronghold was the largest bandit fortress in the empire, backed by the Crown Prince's faction, manned by 3,000 elite soldiers disguised as bandits. The court had tried to clear it multiple times and always failed. She was convinced we'd be slaughtered. For once, Song Jiao didn't argue back. She simply said she trusted me. Qin Hongyi offered again to protect Song Jiao if she'd reveal how to remove the sealing needles. Song Jiao refused without hesitation. As we approached the mountain, I saw what the bandits had prepared. They'd cleared a massive open area, about 1,000 meters wide and deep, by cutting down all the forest on both sides of the road. This was their killing ground, purpose-built for ambushes. Professional work. Beyond this clearing lay the narrow pass between Qingzhou and Huangzhou. If we could get through, we'd be on my own territory. Then a signal arrow whistled from behind a boulder. A gong crashed. Hundreds of torches blazed to life across the clearing, brighter than our own. 3 infantry formations stood waiting, 1,000 men each, wearing black armor, weapons gleaming. The front rank of each formation was archers with drawn bows. These weren't ragged outlaws. Their stance, their discipline, their equipment, these were trained military veterans. In front of the formations stood 10 massive men, each dressed in wild, distinctive outfits, faces carved with brutality. The 10 great villains of the underworld, laughing at me. Prince of Huangzhou, this road is ours. You want to pass? Leave your head behind. We heard you swore to kill every bandit in the world. Bold words. Well, Here we are, the 10 most wanted men alive. Let's see if you kill us, or we kill you. I sat on my horse at the edge of their killing ground, Zhao Zichang beside me, studying their formations in the torchlight. 3,000 veterans in battle array, 10 elite fighters, archers ready to loose. And somewhere behind those lines, a mysterious woman in a black cloak was watching from the fortress above. We lined up our carts facing the bandit formations, backs outward, pressed tight together to block their view. The horses were unhitched and pulled to the rear. The bandits could hear us moving but couldn't see what we were doing behind our wall of carts. I called out to the 10 villains to identify themselves. They laughed and listed their names one by one. Bloodhand Butcher Du Sha, Yinyang Flower Thief Hua Qianqian, every title more vile than the last. Then they showed me what kind of monsters they were. Wooden stakes on wheeled carts were pushed out from their formations. Hanging from each stake was a body, a woman, stomach cut open. 30 of them. The blood hadn't even dried. They were all pregnant. My vision went red. Behind me, every person in my convoy who could see was shaking with fury. Du Sha told me these women were from Huangzhou, my province, my people. He said bandits had been raiding Huangzhou for years, specifically targeting pregnant women to use unborn babies in blood rituals. He called my people the lowest class of humans, descendants of exiled criminals, and said their lives were worthless. He dared me to come fight. I gripped my sword and answered him. Before I came, maybe their lives were cheap. Maybe nobody cared when they died. But today I'm here. I'm their king. I'm their shield. Whoever kills them, I kill. Tonight, there will be no more 10 great villains. Then they pushed out one more stake. This woman was still alive. Her stomach was sliced open, her hair tied back, her face twisted with agony. She stared at my convoy and used her last breath to scream. Are you really Huangzhou's king? I drew my new sword, blood tears running down my face. My name is Xia Tian. From today, I am Huangzhou's king. She told me that bandits had been hunting pregnant women in Huangzhou for years, performing blood sacrifices with unborn children. The women of Huangzhou lived in constant terror. She begged me to kill these demons. For her, for all the women who would come after her. Can you really kill them? She asked. I can, I said. Tonight, I will. Light returned to her dying eyes. Good. My little sister won't have to be afraid anymore. Having a king is nice, but if you break your promise, I won't forgive you even from the grave. My people of Huangzhou have suffered too much. Then the light left her eyes forever. I looked up at the stars and swore on my life that I would keep my word. Du Sha lost patience. He ordered the charge, 10 elite villains in front, 3,000 hardened fighters behind them, rushing straight at my line of carts. At 200 paces, their archers loosed a rain of arrows. 10 hidden sword youths leaped onto my horse with shields, covering me completely. The arrows hammered uselessly against our reinforced cart walls. I'd had thick wooden planks installed on every frontline vehicle. At 150 paces, their arrows thinned. At 100 paces, they ran out. 50 paces. 30 paces. They were screaming, weapons raised, charging full speed at what they thought was a defenseless convoy of cripples and children. I raised my sword and roared. Open the carts. The rear doors of every frontline cart swung open simultaneously, revealing row after row of weapons mounted inside, aimed directly at the charging horde. I brought my sword down and screamed, "Fire, my soldiers!" Every one of them red-eyed with fury after watching those murdered pregnant women, pulled the triggers on. Our secret weapons, 50-bolt repeating crossbows. These were based on designs from my past life, improved versions of an ancient mechanism that could fire 50 bolts in rapid succession. My blacksmiths and carpenters had been building them the entire journey. This was what those mysterious workshop carts had been producing all along. The bolts tore through the air like lightning, shrieking as they flew. The first volley punched through one bandit's body and kept going into the man behind him. Heads exploded like melons. Row after row of bandits dropped like cut wheat. The sound of impacts and screaming filled the night. The 10 great villains survived. They were skilled enough to dodge or deflect. But their horses were killed, and the ground around them turned into a river of blood and severed limbs. In seconds, over 1,000 bandits were dead and 300 more wounded. Nearly half their force, gone in one barrage. These weren't ordinary criminals, though. The survivors grabbed corpses and used them as shields, reducing the crossbow's effectiveness. Professional soldiers' instincts. Then the bolts ran out. That was everything we'd manufactured on the road. There was no second volley. Du Sha, the bloodhand butcher, realized it instantly. He rallied his remaining men, screaming that we had nothing left but cripples and children. The surviving bandits charged, driven by greed for our gold, our women, our horses. They believed victory was seconds away. I gave 2 orders. Zhao Zichang, attack. Leave no one alive. Zichang rode out like a red-eyed dragon, spear leveled at Du Sha, and bellowed, Huangzhou's Zhao Zichang is here. Who dares fight? His spear blocked 5 of the 10 villains by itself. Then a second figure leaped from our convoy. The faceless one, wrapped head to toe in white bandages like a mummy, sword blazing with the aura of a first-rate swordsman. He'd sealed his grandmaster cultivation to practice the ageless rejuvenation art, but even at reduced power, his skill was terrifying. He blocked the other 5 villains. Behind them, our crossbow carts rolled aside and revealed the real surprise, a proper military formation. 50 heavy cavalry in full armor rode out shoulder to shoulder. Behind them, a row of shield bearers. Behind those, 3 rows of spearmen. Behind those, archers. On the flanks, 50 light cavalry, my wounded veterans, fully healed and battle-ready. The Huangzhou army showed its face to the world for the first time. In her cart, Qin Hongyi's jaw dropped. She couldn't process what she was seeing. The repeating crossbows, impossible weapons that shouldn't exist. The faceless one, supposedly dying, now fighting like a demon. The wounded soldiers, supposedly useless, now armored and charging. Everything she'd mocked for weeks was proven catastrophically wrong. She screamed that it had to be an illusion, that we couldn't possibly win, that none of this made sense. But it was all real, and the battle was just beginning. Song Jiu propped Qin Hongyi up so she could watch the battle. The old demoness insisted we'd still lose. The bandits outnumbered us several times over, and she was sure our healed cavalry would collapse from their injuries mid-fight. On the battlefield, Zhao Zichang and the Faceless One each held 5 of the 10 villains at bay. The villains were stunned. They were supposed to be the unbeatable elite of the underworld, yet they couldn't get past 2 men. 5 against 1, and they could barely manage a draw. If even one of them broke away to charge our lines, the remaining 4 would be slaughtered instantly. When Du Sha ordered his men to split sideways and clear the road for their infantry charge, Zichang and the Faceless One were happy to comply. That was exactly my plan. Clear the center for the main clash. The remaining bandits charged our formation, convinced they'd win in close combat. Our archers fired a volley that dropped the front ranks, but these were trained soldiers. They'd seen worse and kept coming. At 20 paces, Old Ghost dropped his visor, raised his new horse-cutting saber, and roared the order to charge. 50 heavy cavalry launched forward like a moving wall of steel. The impact was devastating. Bandit weapons bounced off the heavy armor, throwing sparks. Ironclad warhorses smashed into men, shattering bones on contact. The horse-cutting sabers were brutally efficient. Heads flew from shoulders, bodies split apart. The heavy cavalry plowed straight through the enemy formation, leaving a trail of crushed corpses, severed limbs, and rolling heads. Behind the cavalry, my infantry advanced in perfect step, shields forward, spears level, archers ready. All those days of drilling, marching, and standing at attention had paid off. Their formation held tight, not a single man out of line. Every soldier was fighting with tears and rage. For those murdered pregnant women, for the unborn children, for the people of Huangzhou who'd suffered for years under these monsters. In her cart, Qin Hongyi noticed something that made her blood freeze. The Faceless One's breathing pattern during combat. It was her technique. The energy coating his sword was long-life qi, produced by the complete ageless rejuvenation art. Not just the upper half I'd supposedly gotten from her, the complete version. She turned white. Did he master the full technique? Song Jiu grinned like a fox about to steal a chicken. Guess. Then Song Jiu pointed at our cavalry. Notice how fast their wounds healed? Want to know why? The realization hit Qin Hongyi like a thunderbolt. The wounded soldiers had also cultivated the complete technique. That's how they recovered so quickly, which meant I hadn't just gotten the upper half from her. I'd somehow deduced the entire method from just that. Has your master's wisdom truly reached sage level? She whispered. Master, forgive your unworthy disciple, she murmured. I let the ageless rejuvenation art become. She couldn't finish the sentence. Her eyes rolled back, and she fainted from sheer despair. On the battlefield, the heavy cavalry's horses were finally tiring. Without speed, they were surrounded by swarming bandits. The 10 villains saw their chance and howled with excitement. Du Sha screamed that victory was within reach. Kill these 2 fighters, and the battle was won. But our infantry formation was right behind the cavalry, marching steadily forward in perfect order. The bandits hadn't won anything yet. The Faceless One revealed his true identity to the 5 villains surrounding him, and it shattered their courage completely. He told them who he really was by listing his past kills. 10 years ago, he'd single-handedly destroyed a bandit fortress of 1,200 men, cutting their tendons and hanging them from the mountain to bleed out over 3 days. 5 years ago, he'd skinned every corrupt official in an entire county and hung them from the city gates, then dismembered every bandit in the area. 3 years ago, 3,000 elite border soldiers turned bandit. He crippled every single one in the time it takes to eat breakfast, then tortured their general to death over 3 days at the edge of a mass grave. The Blood Azura, that was his legend. 20 years of killing had made him the most feared name in the underworld. He killed by the thousands. He left no survivors to describe his face. Everyone who saw him died. Du Sha and his 4 companions went white. They begged to surrender, offered to join my service, promised their treasure. The Faceless One refused everything. He told them my exact instructions. Let them watch their army die first, then kill them slowly. He'd been holding back the whole time, not because he couldn't beat them, but because he was using the fight to calibrate the new long-life chi from the ageless rejuvenation art. Once it merged properly with his body, he ended things in 3 breaths. One sword stroke cut all 5 wrists. Another cut their ankles. A third pierced their dantians. They collapsed like dogs. Then he gave them 3 stabs each, through the thighs, through the kidneys, through the chest. One for the innocent people they'd murdered. One for the pregnant women and unborn children. One on my behalf. On the other side, Zhao Zichang had done the same to the other 5 villains. Both men stood over their crippled enemies and refused to help the main battle. They were waiting. The mysterious woman in the black cloak, the one who'd beaten all 10 villains, hadn't shown herself yet. She was the real threat. On the main battlefield, our heavy cavalry had done its work. They'd slaughtered another 300 bandits before their horses tired and lost momentum. But right behind them, my infantry stepped forward in perfect formation. I swung my sword and roared, "Defend!" 100 shield-bearers slammed their shields into the ground. Behind them, spearmen laid their weapons across the shield tops, points bristling outward. The formation transformed into a steel hedgehog, shields to block, spears to kill. The remaining bandits charged again, convinced that raw recruits who'd only trained for 2 weeks couldn't possibly hold. A bandit leader leaped into the air with a massive battle axe, screaming as he brought it crashing down toward our shield wall. But these weren't the same scared farm boys who'd wobbled through their first day of standing at attention. 2 weeks of running, breathing cultivation techniques, drilling spear thrusts until they could hit an egg-sized target every time. It had changed them. They stood firm behind their shields, spear points gleaming, waiting for the impact. The battle unfolded exactly as I'd planned. When the first bandit, a third-rate warrior, leaped into the air with his battle axe to smash our shield wall, a young spearman named Kai Dao thrust his weapon straight through the man's throat before the axe could fall. The boy's face went pale and his hands trembled, but he'd killed a warrior 3 levels above him. Lu Shu calmly told him he'd earned a special reward. The kid immediately stabbed another bandit and asked for more prizes. The real test came when organized squads of bandits slammed into our shields with heavy staffs. The impact nearly broke my shield-bearer's arms. Some coughed blood from the internal shock, but they held. They used the ageless rejuvenation breathing to endure the pain, and they held the line. Just as I'd taught them, stop the first wave and the enemy's momentum dies. The bandits behind would crash into the ones in front, turning their numbers into a disadvantage. First charge, fierce. Second, weaker. Third, exhausted. When the bandits' push faltered, my shield-bearers shoved forward, and the spearmen launched their weapons like flying serpents. My spears were 1/2 a meter longer than standard, a deliberate modification. In formation fighting, every extra inch of reach is an advantage. The bandits, trained on normal military spears, misjudged the distance. They thought they'd backed out of range. They hadn't. Spear after spear punched through their bodies. When individual bandit warriors tried to break into our formation, the hidden sword youths, concealed inside and around the ranks, killed them instantly with hidden crossbows and daggers that seemed to appear from thin air. One bandit who broke through stared in disbelief as 3 iron daggers materialized against his skin and stabbed him 9 times. His last words, "There are ghosts in the Huangzhou army." Every bandit officer on the front line was assassinated by hidden sword youths within minutes. Without leaders, the bandit formation collapsed into chaos. They started retreating in panic. My new soldiers were transforming before my eyes. At first, some turned white and vomited after their first kills. I stood on the war drum cart and shouted at them. "Why are you throwing up? Are these bandits human? They cut open pregnant women for entertainment. They're animals. Every spear thrust is justice for the women and children they murdered." The vomiting stopped. Their faces hardened. Their thrusts got faster, more accurate, more vicious. They started chanting as they advanced. "Bandits, no matter how far, we will kill them. Bandits, no matter how strong, we will kill them. All bandits die." On both flanks, the heavy cavalry shed their armor, joined the light cavalry, and squeezed the remaining bandits from the sides. My infantry pushed forward in lockstep, shields up, spears out, archers raining arrows from behind. The formation was textbook perfect, every drill paying off. The 10 crippled villains watched in horror as their 3,000 elite fighters were being systematically destroyed by 400 soldiers who'd been civilians 3 weeks ago. Dusha screamed that it was impossible, but screaming tore open his wounds, so he screamed quieter. The Faceless One and Zhao Zicheng still hadn't rejoined the main fight. They stood guard over the defeated villains, watching, waiting. They knew the real enemy hadn't appeared yet, the mysterious woman in the black cloak who'd beaten all 10 villains single-handedly. Then I felt it, a shadow dropping from Tianmen Mountain like a hawk, silent and deadly, sword aimed straight down at the top of my head as I stood on the drum cart. The killing intent cut through the blood-soaked night air. The blade was getting closer. The black-cloaked woman finally made her move. She dropped from the mountain like a bat, silent and invisible, sword aimed at my skull. She was 10 feet above me when I spotted the glint of her blade. I grabbed the Huang battle flag beside the war drum. Its pole was actually an oversized spear with a sharpened tip. I thrust it upward. She had to abandon her killing strike to deflect, buying me a second. As she tumbled downward for a second attempt, I pulled out a repeating hand bow and emptied it into her at point-blank range. 8 bolts pierced her body. The tips were poisoned. She staggered but kept coming, driving her sword at me with everything she had left. I swung my saber to meet it. She sneered. I was supposed to be a martial arts cripple with no internal energy. Our weapons collided. Her sword shattered. My blade kept going, straight through her chest and out her back, pinning her to the drum frame. Her hood fell away, revealing a beautiful face streaming with blood. She was the Zongheng holy woman, Tu Jiaojiao. She gasped in disbelief. "How? You're supposed to be a martial arts waste. How do you have internal energy?" I smiled. Yes, she was right to be confused. Over the past days, my Yi Jing practice had finally cleared the last blockages in my meridians. I could channel Qi now. The world's most famous cripple had quietly become a cultivator. Before dying, she warned me that her master, someone far more powerful, would come to avenge her. She said her master would drain my life force and leave me begging for death. Her very last words were a warning to her master. Be careful. The Huangzhou people like to attack the chest. I pulled my blade free, mounted a horse, and charged into the remaining bandits from the flank, joining my cavalry. I cut down the first bandit I reached, took his head clean off with one swing. Blood splashed across my armor as I rode through their broken ranks. Old Ghost led 100 riders behind me. Together we carved straight through what was left of the bandit formation, shattering it completely. The surviving bandits broke and ran, screaming that there were demons in the Huangzhou army. Lu Shu dissolved our formation into hunting squads that chased them down in every direction. The bandits had chosen this battlefield because the cliffs on both sides left nowhere to go except forward or back. They'd planned to trap us here. Instead, they'd trapped themselves. Those who surrendered begged for mercy. Old Ghost told them calmly, "Our prince says you must die." And they did. The fastest runners reached the base of Tianmin Mountain, hoping to escape into the forest. But just as they thought they'd found safety, a mob of people burst from the tree line. Civilians, armed with whatever they could find, screaming for revenge. "Kill the bandits. Avenge our families." The people of Huangzhou had come. A group of wild-looking people burst from the tree line at the base of Tianmin Mountain. Men and women with sun-darkened skin, wearing animal hides and feathers, armed with iron blades, sharpened bamboo poles, and homemade bows. Their archery was exceptional. Every arrow found its mark, not a single shot wasted. Good soldiers in the making. A muscular woman in leopard skin shouted to me that they weren't enemies. Some of the murdered pregnant women had been their sisters, taken by the bandits. They'd tracked them here, but hadn't dared attack 3,000 fighters alone. Now they wanted revenge. I told them to hold the mountain's edge and kill any bandit who tried to flee, but stay out of my army's way. They agreed instantly. My cavalry punched through what remained of the bandit formation, wheeled around, and started the final slaughter. I left Old Ghost in command of the cleanup and rode to where the Faceless One and Zhao Zichang stood guard over the 10 crippled villains. I asked if the mysterious figure behind all this, the one who'd beaten the 10 villains and organized everything, had shown themselves. Both men said no. I scanned Tianmin Mountain and decided they weren't coming tonight. Then I interrogated Du Sha before he bled out. He told me a mysterious person had offered 100,000 gold taels for my head, claiming to represent the crown prince. That's what drew all 10 villains together for this ambush. The 3,000 bandit soldiers? They were deserters from the Huangzhou border army. Du Sha revealed what I'd suspected but hadn't confirmed. There was essentially no real border army left in Huangzhou. 20 years ago, when my father seized the throne, he'd sent elite troops to defend the province. The Celestial Wolf cavalry wiped them out. He sent more for 5 years running, all destroyed. Eventually, the court stopped sending anyone and left Huangzhou to fend for itself, keeping the border army's name on paper just to save face. The current border army was just locals who'd armed themselves with whatever they could find, equipment worse than bandits, fighting ability even lower. Most deserted. Some became mountain bandits. Some ended up here, in the 10 villains' fortress. Du Sha himself had been a Huangzhou border soldier 20 years ago. All 10 villains were survivors of those early massacres. They couldn't go home to the capital and couldn't face the Celestial Wolf Riders again, so they became what they hated most, predators feeding on the weak. Before he lost consciousness, Du Sha hallucinated, screaming at invisible ghosts, the spirits of everyone he'd murdered, coming to drag him down. He said they visited him every night. In his final lucid moment, he whispered, "Next life, if the world is peaceful, I won't be a bandit. I just want to sleep well." Sima Lan walked up and said coldly, "With your sins, you'll come back as a pig, not a person." She asked if I wanted to build another skull mound. I nodded and ordered Zhao Zichang to cut off all their hands and feet. He drew his blade and struck 40 times. 10 villains became limbless torsos, screaming. Sima Lan had insisted on watching. She'd said she wouldn't be frightened. These men had butchered pregnant women and deserved everything. But when Zichang finished, her face went white and she nearly vomited. Sima Gu caught her and suggested going back to the carriage. "I'm really not scared," Lan told me as she left, pressing her hand against her chest. "I believe you," I said. I didn't. The main battle was over. My new soldiers began clearing the battlefield. The intelligence Du Sha had given me painted a grim picture of what awaited in Huangzhou. No real army, no supplies, no support from the capital, and the Celestial Wolf Empire already massing for invasion. Then Lu Shu rode up, bringing with him that athletic woman in the leopard skin. After the battle, my new soldiers learned one final lesson: never trust a dead bandit. Several men got hurt when bandits playing dead attacked during cleanup. But the recruits adapted fast, stabbing every corpse before touching it. The fakers revealed themselves and were hunted down by our cavalry and hidden sword youths. Then Steward Bai moved in with his scavenger teams, grinning ear to ear, stripping the battlefield bare as usual. Under my battle flag, I sat with Sima Lan and met the woman in leopard skin, Su Qi, from Su family village deep in Huangzhou's 100,000 mountains. She wasn't a bandit. Her grandfather had been a county magistrate under the old Qin dynasty, and her father was exiled to Huangzhou for offending a superior. The family fled into the mountains to escape the endless wars and had been surviving there for 20 years. She told me the mountains were full of settlements like hers, Han Chinese refugees hiding from the chaos. But they weren't alone in there. Hostile tribal peoples also lived in those mountains, raiding Han villages, taking slaves, and selling captives to the Celestial Wolf Empire for supplies. The hatred between the two groups had become a fight to the death. Then she mentioned something that caught my attention. Every year when the Celestial Wolf army invaded, they'd spend a month inside the 100,000 mountains, not raiding, not fighting, just searching. 20 years of searching. Whatever they were looking for had to be incredibly important to justify that kind of effort year after year. I filed that away for later. Sima Lan was thinking the same thing. When I asked Su Qi whether the mountain people would answer a call to arms from their new king, she answered honestly, absolutely not. They didn't trust anyone from the imperial court. The atmosphere got tense for a moment, but I respected her honesty. She told me my reputation had arrived in Huangzhou before I did. The bandit hunts, the declarations, the skull mounds. Word had spread. Before all that, she said, my chances of surviving in Huangzhou were 0 out of 10. Now, after proving I meant what I said about killing bandits, I'd earned myself 1 chance in 10. I laughed. So all that fighting bought me a single thread of hope? Worth it. Then I asked about the situation inside Huangzhou City itself. Her answer was chilling. Everyone in the city has sharpened their weapons. They're waiting to kill you. You're the son of the emperor who abandoned them. You are their enemy. The wind carried the smell of blood from the battlefield. She asked if I still intended to enter Huangzhou. Of course, I said without hesitation. She looked at me with something close to respect. You avenged our women today, so I'll repay that with some advice. If you want to survive in Huangzhou, you need to win over a certain beauty inside the city walls. Su Qi told me the person I needed to win over was a woman named Bai Feng, daughter of the former Huangzhou governor Bai Chong, who died fighting 5 years ago. Since then, Bai Feng had been running Huangzhou City single-handedly. Every exiled official sent there followed her orders. She had absolute authority. If I wanted to take control peacefully, I needed her cooperation. If not, I'd have to kill her. But that would turn every person in the city against me, and the only option left would be massacre. I glanced at the faceless one, wondering if Bai Feng might be a relative of his. He shook his head sadly. His entire Bai clan had been wiped out except for him. No descendants remained. That made me ache for him. If he'd had family waiting somewhere in this world, maybe those 20 years of blood and loneliness wouldn't have weighed so heavily. When I asked Su Qi about setting up camp near her village, she refused flatly. Being associated with an imperial prince would paint a target on her people's backs. Everyone in Huangzhou hated the court that had abandoned them. I didn't push it. Instead, I had Steward Bai prepare 4 carts of supplies, grain, salt, cloth, and weapons. No silver. In a place where money couldn't buy anything, real goods were the only currency that mattered. Su Qi's eyes lit up, and she softened. She pointed me toward an unnamed mountain about 50 miles from her village, a place with ancient forests, a hidden valley fed by underground rivers, fertile land, and enough space to run a horse for half an hour. Perfect for a base camp. The catch? The mountain was crawling with dangerous beasts and venomous creatures. Nobody could survive there. And according to legend, a divine dragon, some enormous predatory creature, lived on its peak and appeared regularly. The mountain people avoided it completely. Su Qi was being clever. She wanted me to kill that creature for them. If I could, it would prove my strength and buy me time to plan my entry into the city. Bai Feng and the mountain people would both wait patiently, expecting the beast to finish me off. If I survived, they'd have to reconsider everything they thought about me. I agreed immediately. We'll call it Dragon Mountain. She warned me one more time. My chances of surviving Huangzhou were still 9 to 1 against. Sima Lan stood beside me as Su Qi left with her supplies. Huangzhou is far more complicated than we expected, she said. I was already thinking bigger. Tianmen Mountain itself was a natural fortress. A single army defending this pass could block the entire Celestial Wolf Empire from reaching the Central Plains. Yet no one had guarded it since the dynasty changed. And strangely, the Wolf Army never tried to push through it either. Why not? Was there some agreement between the two empires? Some secret deal? And if the wolf army was searching for something in Huangzhou's mountains every year, why not just conquer and occupy the province permanently? Why invade, search for a month, and then leave? Something didn't add up. Sima Lan smiled and suggested I focus on the immediate problem, how to enter Huangzhou city and deal with by phone. She teased me about conquering a beauty. I corrected her. She's a city leader, not a conquest. I need her working with me, not under me. Lan gave me a knowing look and asked whether by phone might be the same white-clothed, masked woman who delivered the hidden sword youths outside the fortress. I said maybe. Then I called Zhao Zichang and Tsang Yi. We were heading up Tianmen Mountain to raid the bandit fortress treasury. My people's favorite activity, and maybe the answers to some of my questions were hidden up there too, along with whatever gold and weapons the 10 villains had hoarded over the years. While my people stripped the battlefield clean below, I climbed Tianmen Mountain with Zhao Zichang and the hidden sword youths to raid the bandit fortress. Zichang cleared the path with his spear, one thrust, one kill, and the hidden sword fighters ghosted through the shadows, eliminating every guard. We reached the main hall and kicked the doors open. Inside, a pale-faced middle-aged scholar drew a sword and demanded to know who we were. When he saw me, his face went white. He couldn't believe I was alive. He dropped his sword, closed his eyes, and started mumbling that I had to be a ghost, that 10 great villains and 3,000 elite fighters couldn't possibly have failed to kill me. Zichang kicked him across the room, shattering his teeth on the stone floor. The man identified himself as Chao Lu, a clansman of Right Prime Minister Chao Wei and a personal advisor to the Crown Prince. He was the one who'd organized this entire ambush. He begged for mercy, tried to leverage the Crown Prince's name, then Chao Wei's name, then offered to sell out both of them for his life. When none of that worked, he tried the most shameless argument I'd ever heard, that since he'd been sent to kill me and failed, his failure was actually my victory, so technically he'd helped me and deserved credit. I almost laughed. Almost. He did give me one useful piece of information before dying. There was a hidden assassin planted by the Crown Prince inside Huangzhou City. A woman. He refused to say her name until Tsang Yi broke all 4 of his limbs from the shadows. Then he talked. I had Zichang finish him with a clean spear thrust through the heart. Then 2 of my hidden sword agents, Song Qi and Song Ba, appeared and knelt. I'd planted them inside the fortress 10 days earlier as undercover bandits. They led me to the treasury behind a hidden wall. When the stone door ground open, I walked into a cavern at least 3 times larger than the Twin Dragon Mountain treasury. Mountains of rice, piles of medicinal herbs, racks of weapons, chests overflowing with gold and silver. Zichang grabbed a fistful of grain and grinned. My lord, we won't lack supplies when we enter Huangzhou now. With this much, we can raise an army at Dragon Mountain. He was right. If we could recruit the mountain people Su Qi had described, people with excellent physiques hardened by wilderness living, and feed them properly, we'd build something formidable. Then I noticed a golden chest set apart from the rest. I pried it open with my blade. Inside, resting on silk, was a jade artifact carved with 9 dragons, lifelike, seemingly ready to fly off the surface. On its base were 8 characters, identical to a similar piece I'd found at Twin Dragon Mountain. 2 of these legendary national treasures, both hidden in bandit lairs, as if someone had placed them there for me to find. I felt invisible hands guiding me towards something I didn't yet understand. I looked toward the distant capital and wondered, was this connected to my destiny in Huangzhou? Who was arranging all of this? Meanwhile, things I didn't know about were happening nearby. Sima Lan had ordered her sister Sima Mei, the mysterious Yi Mei, who'd been secretly guarding my convoy, to kill every spy lurking around Tianmen Mountain. The Imperial intelligence agents were wiped out again. Sima Lan also wanted a portrait of Bai Feng within 3 days. She claimed it was for strategic planning. Sima Ji's eye twitched. Her mistress was clearly jealous but would never admit it. And somewhere in the shadows, the medical school's holy woman had arrived. A pure-eyed girl who wanted to challenge me to a contest of acupuncture technique. Her dying master's final wish was to prove their school's needle arts were still the best in the world. Ijime had a bad feeling about what would happen when that contest took place. I had Tsang Yi store away the precious national jade artifact. It vanished from my hand into thin air. Soon after, Xiaobai arrived with the main force and reported that the bandits' treasure cave was packed with grain, medicine, weapons, gold, and silver, even more than what we found at Two Dragon Mountain. Our empty carts could be filled up again. I picked up some grain and examined it. The rice here is small and not very full, what people call millet. This continent still doesn't have proper large rice. Finding and growing better rice would mean everything for Huang province and the whole empire. I thought about improving the grain, but I don't know much about farming. I need an expert from the agricultural school. The ancient scholar Nongzi already proposed ideas about improving crops. That's exactly the kind of knowledge I need. But when would such a person show up? Through the night, my people carried supplies down the mountain, smiling and excited. They'd been hungry before, so they valued grain more than gold. By dawn, our hundreds of carts were loaded heavy again, though plenty still remained in the cave. Then Li Fei arrived secretly with 3,000 cavalry from Qing province, just as I'd planned. I told him to stay at the bandit fort and wait for my orders. Tomorrow, I would enter Huang province, and the road ahead would be dangerous. I asked him to report our plan to Duke Li. Xiaobai gave me the full count of our loot. 5,000 stones of rice. That's 500,000 jin. 30 carts of medicine. 2 million taels of silver. 500,000 taels of gold. Jewels, paintings, and antiques worth about 100,000 taels. Over 7 million taels total. Plus cloth and countless weapons, though the bandit weapons were poor quality, so I ordered them collected for melting down later at Divine Dragon Mountain. On the battlefield, the dead bandits were burned and their heads stacked into a monument. Not one escaped. I decided to write something beside it. Su Qi and her people from Su family village came to see. They were shaken by the sight of thousands of heads piled together. One of her girls cried and said I had avenged their sisters. Su Qi felt grateful and said if I could truly rule Huang province, it might be a good thing for everyone there. I overheard and told her I hoped to make life better for the people of Huang province, but I needed her help. She agreed. Then she cleverly ordered her man Su Deji to spread word along the road that they had lured me toward a dangerous mountain where dragons appear, and that I would surely die. This way, nobody would try to ambush my convoy, and Su Qi wouldn't be seen as a traitor by her own people. Smart woman. I rewarded her village with another cart of grain, and she accepted without hesitation. Then I sat down and wrote my declaration. I recorded the date and what happened, how the 10 most wanted bandits attacked us with 3,000 men, how they cut open a pregnant woman and killed her unborn child. I wrote that I had long sworn to rid the world of bandits. With help from a mysterious master, we killed them all here. I wrote about our journey so far, killing every bandit we met, helping every poor person we could, spending all our wealth without regret. I declared that I was about to enter Huang province to face the celestial wolf army and might never return. Then I wrote the core of my decree. Bandits rob, kill, and destroy families. Where bandits exist, no home is safe. The words bandit and home cannot stand together. So I issued my kill bandit order, calling on everyone across the empire who shares this belief to hunt bandits down. Anyone who kills bandits can bring their heads to Huang province for a bounty. I would be waiting at my manor with rewards. Su Qi's eyes lit up. She said my decree was brilliant, that bandits would never have peace again, and their so-called bandit family was finished. When I was done writing, I asked Su Qi to guide us into Huang province. She jumped on her horse and said, "My lord, I'll take you in." As the sun rose, our convoy reached the Tianmen Pass and stopped. I found a peaceful spot on the hillside and had 30 new graves dug. That was the cost of our battle against the bandits. 30 soldiers dead. 15 were young men, 15 were teenagers. All buried here now, far from any real home. The families of the fallen knelt before the graves, crying softly. The spring wind blew gently, almost like it was morning too. I stood at the front with Zhang Yi, Zhao Zichong, Lu Shu, Gao Fei, Xiao Bai, and Old Ghost behind me. Behind us stood every soldier we had. 100 cavalry, 100 sword-hiding youths, 85 teenage recruits, and 185 young adult recruits. Further back was Sima Lan's carriage, and behind that, all the new members of our household. On the other side of the mountain, Su Qi and her people waited below, ready to guide us into Huang province. They watched our ceremony with curiosity. What was the prince of Huang province doing? Just a few dozen recruits had died. Was it really worth a prince holding a personal ceremony for common soldiers? In their eyes, I was the emperor's ninth son, noble beyond measure. These soldiers were nobodies, lives worth less than grass. But one of Su Qi's girls, a young woman named Xiao Wei, watched me with bright eyes. She told Su Qi that I seemed different from other officials, that I seemed to truly care about my people, that I looked genuinely sad. Su Qi corrected her when she called me sentimental. She said the right word was loyal and righteous. Xiao Wei went on about how I charged into battle at the front, how I showed no mercy to enemies, but then gently treated the wounds of my own men with careful hands. She said she wanted to follow someone like me. Su Qi teased her about being attracted to my looks, but Xiao Wei insisted I was worth admiring. Su Qi agreed. Her whole group nodded along, glancing at the carts of supplies I had given them. They all hoped I could survive in Huang Province. But Su Qi said that would be extremely difficult. It depended on how a certain powerful woman in Huang Province City would react, and on my own abilities. At the graves, I looked at each mound of earth and saw their young faces in my mind. Just yesterday, these boys sat with me and said things that still echoed in my heart. They told me I had saved their families, that their lives belonged to me. They promised to train hard, to kill bandits for me, to become the best warriors of Huang Province. They reminded me of my own promise, to build a paradise where everyone has clothes, food, a house, and can find a wife. I remembered teasing a boy named Dabao. He was a thick-browed kid with an honest smile. I asked him why getting married mattered so much. He said it was to have children. I asked what for. He said so his children could become soldiers for my household. I asked why. He laughed his simple laugh and said his mother told him I was a rare good prince. If I was well, the whole household would be well, and all of Huang Province would be well. Protecting me meant protecting their happiness. My eyes burned with tears. Those memories played before me like paintings. They were alive just yesterday. They were right in front of me just yesterday. My heart ached terribly. I forced my tears back, bent down, and bowed deeply to the graves. The families panicked and knelt before me, crying that a prince should never bow to common people. But behind me, Song Yi, Zhao Zichong, Lu Shu, Gao Fei, Old Ghost, and Xiao Bai all bowed. Every soldier bowed. The families wept and whispered to their dead children that their deaths were worthy. I stood up, my voice shaking. I called for wine. Song Jio handed me a bowl. I closed my eyes for a moment to steady myself, then poured the first bowl onto the ground. I told my fallen brothers that we won a great victory and they could rest in peace. I told them I knew they were scared when they charged, that their hands trembled when they fought. But they were still brave, and when death came, they did not flinch. They always said protecting me meant protecting happiness, but I was their prince and I failed to protect them. The guilt was tearing me apart. My eyes filled with blood. A thin line of red crept from the corner of my mouth. Song Jio cried out for me. Everyone moved to help, but I raised my hand and they froze. The families begged me to take care of myself, saying without me, none of them would have survived the frozen wasteland. They said my health mattered more than grief. I smiled sadly and poured a second bowl. I promised their families would receive rewards for their sacrifice. I asked their spirits to watch over me as I took control of Huang Province, and swore to move their graves there someday so they could receive proper respect. Their names would stay on our honor roll forever. I poured the third bowl and made my biggest promise. I told them to watch from above. I asked for 3 years. In 3 years, I would build that paradise I promised. Houses, clothes, food, and wives for everyone. Their sacrifice bought us new life and the chance to keep moving forward. They died with supreme glory. Every soldier roared together, "Supreme glory." The sound split the sky and shook the earth. I pointed toward Huang Province and told the dead to watch us march forward without stopping, unstoppable and undefeated. I wished them peace on their journey. Then I turned to the living and shouted that Huang Province lay ahead, full of bloody battles. I asked if they were afraid. They roared back, "Not afraid. Fight to the death." 3 times they shouted it. I laughed and called for wine for everyone. The female medics passed bowls to every soldier. I recited an ancient border poem about moonlight, long marches, and the legendary general who once kept invaders from crossing the mountains. My soldiers did not fully understand the old words, but Sima Lan shouted the meaning for everyone to hear. She explained it with such passion that her beautiful face turned red. She said I was telling them that from today, every one of them was that legendary general, and together we would never let the enemy cross into our land again. The soldiers roared their own version of the vow. Every person in our household joined in. The sound was so fierce it scared birds from the trees and drove animals from the forest. Suchi watched from a distance, her eyes sharp with admiration. She whispered that I was using grief to forge an army of desperate warriors, and that my chances of survival just rose slightly, from 9 parts death to 8. After the ceremony, Suchi rode beside me as our convoy finally crossed into the lands of Huang Province. A wave of desolate air hit my face. Before me stretched a vast land of mixed green and yellow earth. The terrain of Huang Province was strange. The main road followed the foot of the 100,000 mountains, stretching deep into the province. The road split 2 completely different worlds. On one side, the mountains were breathtakingly beautiful. On the other side, a yellow wasteland sat in dead silence. The mountain range itself was incredible. Endless chains of tall peaks stretched behind us like giant dragons, disappearing far beyond what my eyes could see. Every mountain was different. The snow had just melted, and waterfalls poured down from the peaks like white silk ribbons. The 100,000 mountains looked like a paradise on earth. I was genuinely amazed. Right before me stood a round pillar of rock, shaped like a massive stick thrust into the clouds. I could not see where it ended above the cloud line. Behind it rose another peak, shaped like a sharp sword with cliffs on all 4 sides. Ancient trees grew halfway up its walls, making the whole thing look like a miniature landscape sculpture carved by some giant craftsman. And there were countless peaks shaped like animals: wolves, leopards, elephants. Endless and bizarre. I imagined that maybe in ancient times this land was home to enormous beasts, and when the world changed, they turned to stone and became these mountains. Suchi noticed me staring and spoke up. She told me the mountains looked beautiful from the outside, but inside they were a death trap. Poisonous fog could kill at any moment. Venomous insects, snakes, wolf packs, tigers, lions, and dragon elephants roamed everywhere. Anyone without jungle survival experience would die 10 times out of 10. And beyond the animals, there were man-eating divine dragons and murderous foreign tribes. I sighed and told her something she already knew. Even with all those dangers inside the mountains, her people still chose to live in there. That meant the dangers outside the mountains, from other humans, were even worse. The people outside were more dangerous than the venomous snakes, wild beasts, and foreign tribes combined. Suchi looked at me deeply and said I had sharp eyes that could see the truth from small clues. I smiled and turned to look at the other side of the road. There lay a vast yellow plain, completely barren. No grass, no life, just yellow rocks and dry mud. But beyond that dead zone, the land turned green again. This lifeless patch sat in the middle of living land like a strange mark. I asked Suchi why this yellow land was so dry when mountain streams ran all around it with plenty of water. She explained that years ago, scholars had dug down and found layers of black stones underground. These stones gave off heat on their own, baking all the moisture out of the soil above. The scholars declared the black stones were cursed objects that had to stay buried. Since then, people avoided the area as bad luck. My heart jumped with excitement. Black stones that generate heat? That was not a curse at all. That was a treasure, an essential material for smelting steel on a large scale. Huang Province truly was a land of hidden riches. And if this was just sitting on the surface, the 100,000 mountains probably held even more minerals and resources deep inside. Suchi asked casually if I knew what those black stones really were. I asked why she thought I would know. She said it was because I possessed the wisdom of a sage. I laughed and told her I would share the answer once she joined my household. She smiled back and said she would wait for the future. Then Zhao Zicheng rode up fast, his sharp eyes fixed on the forest ahead along the road. He reported that our scouts had spotted a large number of people watching us from the trees. Suchi looked in the same direction and said the local human villages should have received her message and would not attack in force. These watchers were likely from a foreign tribe settlement. They were probably sizing up our strength, deciding whether they could kill me and steal our convoy. I followed their gaze and saw them, figures with feathers in their hair and animal skins on their bodies, holding weapons, peeking from behind rocks and trees along the mountain ridges. Song Yi's voice appeared in my ear, asking if he should strike first. I shook my head slightly. We had just arrived in this land. Better to watch and wait. I told Lu Shu to pass the order, prepare for battle. In an instant, the grief vanished from my soldiers' eyes, replaced by a fierce hunger for combat. Whoever came at us would die. This time, no one's hands would tremble. Up in the forest, a large red-haired, green-eyed man named Alubai sat in a tree, watching our grain carts with greed. He was the leader of this group. He spoke our language and asked a red-haired woman named Adan who Su Chi's convoy belonged to. She did not know, but guessed we were merchants traveling through Huang province, possibly heading across the Yin Mountains to sell grain in the Celestial Wolf Empire. Alubai said if they killed us all and took our grain, his tribe could eat for 10 years. Adan asked if he could handle Su Chi. He laughed an ugly laugh and boasted about what he would do to Su Chi after capturing her. Then he jumped down from the tree and roared at his warriors to charge. Kill every man taller than a cartwheel. Keep the women alive for their pleasure. Over 100 foreign warriors burst from the forest and blocked our road. They were tall, with red hair, green eyes, and savage faces. They screamed for our men to kill themselves and our women to surrender. Alubai stood at the front, releasing the energy of a first-rate fighter, looking arrogant beyond reason. I raised my eyes coldly and asked Su Chi if these people were her enemies. She confirmed they were from the White Fox tribe, who worshipped the white fox as their ancestor. Their men were lustful and their women cunning. They numbered over 10,000 in the mountains, powerful and hard to deal with. They had been killing our people for years and were her sworn enemies. Sima Lan appeared behind me with Sima Gu. She told me that according to the Sima family's intelligence, the White Fox tribe was extremely hostile toward our people and liked to make drinking cups from human skulls. They carried heavy blood debts against us. I smiled gently and told her I understood. Her feelings matched mine exactly. Then I rode forward and asked if these were the brave men of White Fox tribe. Alubai stared at Sima Lan with disgusting lust and demanded I get off my horse and die. I asked if he knew who I was. He said he did not care. I told him coldly to remember my name, Xiatian, because I was the man who would destroy his White Fox tribe. He exploded in rage and screamed for his warriors to charge. He claimed Sima Lan for himself and ordered them not to kill her by mistake. Then the White Fox warriors launched their attack. The White Fox warriors in front of us were making a lot of noise, but their charge was slow. Something felt wrong. I smiled to myself. If we were talking about military tactics, these tribesmen were no match for me even if they combined all their brains together. Just as I expected, the real attack came from the left. Hundreds of foreign warriors burst out from the forest of the 100,000 mountains, screaming and charging at our convoy from the side. About 1,000 of them in total. It was a classic trick: make noise in the front, strike from the side. They thought they had already won. Based on their past experience, merchant guards would panic and fall apart. Then they would kill the men and drag our women into the grass. I could see the disgusting hunger in their eyes. The warriors at the front drew their bows and aimed at our carts, ready to shoot our men down. They were skilled hunters who had grown up in these forests, excellent archers, every one of them. They were confident no man in our convoy could escape their arrows. But then they noticed something strange. Nobody in our convoy was panicking. Before they could figure out why, swords appeared from thin air. My sword-hiding youths materialized like ghosts from empty space, slicing across the throats of every bowman in reach. Blood flowers bloomed among the White Fox ranks. The sword-hiding boys carried the grief from our burial ceremony and turned it into killing fury. After cutting down the archers, they vanished back into nothing, as if they were never there. The White Fox warriors screamed in terror about forest ghosts and demons. In the legends of the 100,000 mountains, there were not only divine dragons, but also ghost spirits. The White Fox tribe worshipped foxes that became spirits, so they believed deeply in the supernatural. Their fear was beyond words. At that same moment, the side panels of our wagons on the left swung open with a bang. Inside, rows of our archers knelt on one knee, faces pressed against their bowstrings, eyes full of killing intent. The bows were already drawn tight. Gao Fei gave the cold order: free fire, no survivors. At 20 paces, they did not even need to aim. Every arrow found a body. Arrows screamed through the air and punched through White Fox flesh. The warriors at the front of their charge were pierced clean through. Blood sprayed from their thrashing bodies along the forest edge. One volley cut down a whole crowd. Another volley cleared another section. They screamed for their leader, a Lubai, to save them, crying that it was a trap, that there were ghosts, that they had walked into an ambush. Our archers kept firing freely. The rain of arrows drove the White Fox warriors back, leaving piles of corpses behind. They were terrified now. This was no merchant caravan. This was an army. The ones who had charged from the forest turned and fled back into the trees like stray dogs. They had grown up in the woods and moved through the branches like monkeys. Once inside the thick forest, our arrows were blocked by ancient trees and vines. Gao Fei ordered the archers to stop. They stared at the forest with frustration, wishing they could have killed more. Meanwhile, at the front of our convoy, a Lubai was shocked. His plan to attack from the side, while distracting us from the front, had completely failed. His mind raced with stupid thoughts. He actually convinced himself that I had set this trap because I wanted to steal his woman, a Dan. The jealousy made him even angrier. He was a first-rate warrior. He decided he would smash through my trap with raw power and kill me in front of a Dan to show off. He stomped the ground, launched himself into the air like an eagle, and shouted for his warriors to follow him. He called on his White Fox god to protect them. But then he saw what waited for him, a line of shield-bearing soldiers with grief-filled eyes and murderous energy. Behind the shield stood another row of soldiers holding weapons he had never seen before. Crossbows. The short bolts gleamed with a cold light that made his skin crawl. He realized too late. A man in the air is the easiest target for arrows. My new recruits looked at him with hatred and pulled their triggers. The crossbow bolts were small, but incredibly fast. A Lubai swung his big blade in a spinning wall, knocking away many bolts. But there were too many. They broke through his energy shield, broke through his skin, and buried themselves in his flesh like small venomous snakes. Blood ran along the bolts. He was relieved that none hit a vital spot, but then the pain grew sharp, then itchy, then his whole body went numb. He screamed that the bolts were poisoned. He crashed down hard in front of our shield wall, landing on his knees, blood spraying from dozens of holes in his body like a punctured sack. I drew my war blade, kicked my horse forward, burst through the shield line like wind, and reached him in a flash. I brought my blade down and shouted that anyone who kills our people must die. His last word was a scream of refusal. Then his head flew into the sky. His headless body shot blood high into the air. I charged straight into the remaining White Fox warriors, my bloody blade spinning and slashing. They panicked when they saw their leader fall, but got excited when they saw me come alone. They threw blue-tinted throwing knives and blue poison needles from their mouths, filling the air with a foul stench. The situation looked dangerous for a moment. But then Song Yi and my 10 sword-hiding guards appeared from nowhere, shields forming a circle around me, blocking everything. Then they spread out and began slaughtering. Old Ghost led the cavalry and like a sharp knife, cutting the enemy apart. The White Fox warriors begged for mercy, offering their village women. Old Ghost killed them without hesitation and said I would take whatever I wanted myself. The survivors ran for the forest, but my sword-hiding youths were waiting there too. Invisible blades cut throats in the shadows. The White Fox warriors fled deeper, swearing to report back to their chief. After 500 meters, my boys stopped chasing. I had ordered them not to pursue too far this time. There would be plenty of chances later. I had other plans. After half an hour, the battlefield was cleaned. Over 1,000 White Fox bodies lay on the road. We had only a few light wounds. We stacked their heads into another monument and carved bloody words into the ancient trees on both sides. Those who kill our people will be hunted down no matter how far they run. As we continued marching, I gathered my commanders and asked their thoughts on the foreign tribes' fighting style. Lu Shu noted their weapons were simple: hunting bows, blow darts, throwing knives, machetes, wooden clubs, and spears. Gao Fei added that despite crude weapons, these warriors knew the forest perfectly and were nearly impossible to chase once inside. Old Ghost complained that his cavalry was useless in thick trees. I told him his riders would shine on open grassland against the Celestial Wolf Empire. The forest belonged to Song Yi and his sword-hiding warriors. I announced that once we reached Divine Dragon Mountain, I would build a 1,000-man mountain warfare unit specially trained for forest combat, with new weapons I had already designed. Su Chi studied me carefully and finally asked the question on her mind. She realized I had announced my name on purpose and let some warriors escape alive. Was I planning something? I smiled and asked her to guess. Her eyes lit up. She said I killed White Fox warriors and built a monument to win the hearts of the local people. And I let survivors escape so they would gather more tribes against me. I asked if Divine Dragon Mountain was a good place to be surrounded. She understood instantly and said she would help me get surrounded. Old Ghost was confused and asked why we would want that. He reminded us there were supposed to be real dragons on that mountain. What if we got trapped with the dragons? Everyone in the world has heard about the Divine Dragon of Huang Province. For countless years, storytellers across the Central Lands have turned it into legends. The most popular version says that deep inside the 100,000 mountains, there are 9 dragon veins, and at the very center sits a massive dragon palace that gave birth to the Huang Province Divine Dragon. Old Ghost grew up listening to these stories, so naturally he feared the dragon and felt uneasy about heading toward it. I saw right through his worry. I told all my commanders to listen carefully. There are no gods in this world, and there are no divine dragons either. Whatever lives in those mountains is probably some kind of intelligent beast. Stab a blade into its body, and it will bleed and die just like anything else. Zhao Zichong, Lu Shu, Gao Fei, and Old Ghost all answered yes, but I could tell not all of them truly believed it yet. I understood the problem. In an age where the Emperor calls himself the Son of Heaven, people blame everything they cannot explain on gods and spirits. I chuckled and asked Old Ghost a simple question. Did he know why thunder crashes in the sky? He blinked his shifty eyes and said it was because the thunder god was angry. I told him to guess again. He tilted his head and suggested the thunder god was punishing evil people. I shook my head and told him plainly that there are no gods in the sky and no thunder god. Old Ghost was only half convinced. He asked how something as powerful as lightning and thunder could not be the work of a divine being. I understood deeply that destroying enemies on the battlefield is easy, but destroying the superstitions inside people's hearts is truly difficult. Still, once we kill the so-called divine dragon, that barrier will break. My future generals must free themselves from blind faith in gods before they can grow into real commanders. I looked at the grand peaks of the 100,000 mountains and asked Old Ghost with a meaningful smile whether he wanted to eat dragon meat. His eyes lit up immediately. He said of course he did, because legend says eating dragon flesh grants eternal life. I gazed back toward the direction of the capital and repeated his words quietly. Eternal life. How many people dream of that? Then I asked him to think about it from a different angle. If he were the emperor of a nation and heard that eating dragon meat could make him live forever, would he send his best warriors to capture the dragon? Old Ghost answered without hesitation. Absolutely, without question. I let my gaze pierce through the distance into the deep mountains. I pointed out that the Huang Province dragon had been appearing in these mountains for who knows how many years. It had not been killed by Huang Province's own masters, nor hunted down by elite warriors from other nations. For it to survive this long, it must be extraordinary. But now it had met me, and I would force it to reveal its true form. Behind me, my commanders' eyes suddenly blazed with confidence. They realized that their prince possessed the wisdom of a sage. I had led them to victory after victory on our entire journey, building an unshakable belief that we could not lose. If the dragon dared to show itself, it would fall to my strategies just like everything else. Old Ghost's heart finally settled. Then I turned to Su Chi and asked her directly, did she think I could kill the divine dragon? Old Ghost's face instantly changed from his usual sly expression to something cold and dangerous. He asked Su Chi if she was trying to use the dragon to get me killed. Was she plotting against me and my household? His question echoed what every commander behind us was thinking. They stared at Su Chi's back with murderous intent. If she gave the wrong answer, she would not walk away safely. Su Chi felt the killing pressure on her back like a blade. But she smiled calmly and answered well. She asked my commanders a simple question, since I had heard her suggestion and still agreed to set up camp on Divine Dragon Mountain. Did they really think I was afraid of the dragon? She said she was only warning everyone that the legendary creature was powerful and that caution was wise. She swore she had no intention of harming me or my household. What she truly wanted was for my warriors to kill the dragon, so our name would echo across the world and we could smoothly take control of Huang Province. Old Ghost's killing intent faded slightly. He asked what benefits we would actually gain from killing the dragon on that mountain. Su Qi's eyes brightened, and she joked that he could eat dragon meat and live forever. Old Ghost told her to speak seriously. Su Qi straightened up and spoke with impressive clarity. She said that whoever can slay a divine dragon must be a heavenly being. Whoever slays a divine dragon must be a true dragon himself. After such a feat, my reputation as a true dragon, a future emperor, would spread across all 9 provinces. Even without the title of crown prince, the whole world would believe I was destined to rule. She explained that along my journey, I had killed bandits, spoken words of human wisdom and kingly authority, and already captured the hearts of countless talented people across the land. But my territory was Huang Province, a place everyone considered a death sentence. And the rumors said I was unloved by the emperor and marked for death by the crown prince. So those talented people did not dare come to me yet. They were all watching and waiting. But if I killed the divine dragon in Huang Province, they would rush to join me without hesitation. When that happened, securing Huang Province would be easy. I nodded and agreed she was right. Su Qi added that if we forced our way into Huang Province City directly, the danger there would be far greater than facing the dragon. That was the real reason I chose to deal with the dragon first. I admired her intelligence. I confirmed her reasoning. The dragon terrorized the mountains and devoured my people. It had to die. As for whether killing it would attract talented followers, I said I was not placing too much hope on that. Then I turned to her and asked if she wanted to become a female prime minister someday. She looked at me seriously and asked in return whether I wanted to become emperor. I said, "What if I do?" She answered that then she could be the female prime minister. I asked, "What if I do not?" She said then she could never hold that position, because no empire in this world would allow a woman to serve as prime minister. Her eyes dimmed with that truth. I laughed boldly and told her something I truly believed. In this world, pure masculine energy alone cannot sustain life, and pure feminine energy alone cannot create it. If there were only men and no women, who would bear children? Humanity would go extinct. Therefore, I have always believed that women can hold up half the sky. Su Qi's eyes exploded with light. She repeated my words, "Women can hold up half the sky." She said she understood now. She turned to face the sunlight and smiled brilliantly. Behind us, Sima Lan heard the same words, and her beautiful eyes shone with emotion. Even Qin Hongyi, lying wounded in her carriage, whispered my words to herself, and some of the hatred in her eyes faded. She told the faceless man that the Huang Province dragon had the strength of a grandmaster. She shared this information because my words about women made her feel good, and because she did not want to die inside a dragon's mouth. The faceless man asked her what the dragon really was, but that answer did not come. Back in Qin Hongyi's carriage, the faceless man asked her what the divine dragon really was. She shook her head and said she did not know. Not only did the Great Xia Empire's Hall of Offerings have no answer, but no nation on the entire continent knew either. She revealed that the Hall of Offerings once sent a Grandmaster-level expert into the 100,000 mountains to track the creature. That Grandmaster was known for his tracking skills. He died. So whatever lived in those mountains was no simple beast. The faceless man's eyes hardened. He said this time he wanted to test the dragon's power for himself. Qin Hongyi laughed coldly and reminded him of reality. Yes, he had been practicing her eternal youth technique, which nourished his dried-up energy and healed his broken body. But right now he could only reach the level of a first-rate warrior. He could not break through to Grandmaster level. Against the divine dragon, he would die 10 times out of 10. The faceless man's phoenix eyes filled with fierce determination. He said maybe there was a method to restore his Grandmaster-level power directly. Qin Hongyi's expression tightened. She told him he was throwing his life away. He answered calmly, "Then so be it." She called him a madman. The carriage fell silent for a long moment. Then the faceless man changed the subject. He pointed out that her eternal youth technique had already become a required practice for all the elite members of my household. Before she was captured, she certainly never imagined that would happen. Qin Hongyi's beautiful, ageless face stiffened. She let out a heavy sigh and said she had never expected such a thing. She felt she had failed the founder of her eternal life school. The faceless man pointed at my back through the carriage window. He told her I had already sent people to spread the word that she was now the chief martial arts instructor of my household's elite guard. Qin Hong rolled her eyes like a young girl and said the emperor and the Hall of Offerings would never believe that. The faceless man shook his head and said they would believe it, because I never do anything without purpose, and everything I set out to do, I have never failed at. Her face changed dramatically. She realized he was right. I had won every single battle on this entire journey. I was still alive, walking into Huang province. Meanwhile, every assassin the crown prince sent was dead. Every expert from the strategist school was dead. Every bandit along the road was dead. Just moments ago, the famous foreign tribal warriors of Huang province had been slaughtered and sent running, leaving mountains of corpses behind. She stared at my back and warned the faceless man that my sage-level wisdom would attract not just our own empire's attention, but the greed of every nation on the continent. The faceless man stood tall and said he would meet that threat with his sword. Come one, kill one. Come two, kill both. Then he asked her what the original purpose of her eternal life school truly was. She answered without hesitation, to pursue eternal life. He asked what else. She thought and said to spread the school's teachings far and wide. The faceless man stepped out of the carriage and told her that her school's philosophy of teaching people to live forever was nothing but empty fantasy and could never truly spread. However, her eternal youth technique was already being learned by all the talented young warriors in my household that could genuinely carry her legacy forward. He suggested she accept the position of chief martial arts instructor. She had nothing better to do anyway. If she spread her school's martial arts across the world, at least when she died someday, she could face her school's founder with pride. His voice drifted back from outside. I had promised that if we killed the divine dragon, she could taste its meat. Maybe then she really would achieve eternal life. Her eyes lit up, and she demanded that I remove the silver needles sealing her power. The faceless man said that was impossible for now, but told her to think about it. Her heart fell into conflict. Dragon meat, eat it or not. Perhaps even she did not realize that deep in her mind, she had already stopped believing I could lose. My string of victories had planted that confidence in her whether she wanted it or not. She needed time to think about what to do next. How could she get me back to the capital? Maybe she should pretend to surrender. That seemed like a good idea. Maybe she should pretend to accept the instructor position. That seemed acceptable too. She would fake loyalty and wait for the right moment. Her eyes shifted craftily. Then she called out to me and said she was willing to accept the position of chief martial arts instructor of my household guard. I turned my head and said good. I called her Senior Qin Hong and said I was pleased. She answered with complicated emotions. Just a while ago I was calling her old witch, and now suddenly she was a respected senior. How practical of me. But secretly, she was excited about the divine dragon appearing. She figured that when it came, my household would have no grandmaster-level fighter, so I would be forced to remove her silver needle seals and let her fight the dragon. Perfect. She would kill the dragon, eat its flesh for eternal life, then capture me and drag me back to the capital to complete her mission and unlock some mysterious underground palace and solve a 100-year-old secret. Her eyes blazed with light. She congratulated herself on being the smartest woman in the world. Hidden somewhere on the carriage, Song Jiao watched every shift of emotion on her face and smirked. This old witch trying to outwit my master would lose everything, even her undergarments. The show was going to be entertaining. Then I pulled out a thick book from inside my coat. The smell of fresh ink rose from its pages. I called Old Ghost over and asked if he wanted to learn from a secret manual I had written. He was overjoyed. Receiving a manual from me was like becoming my student, an incredible honor that would change his status forever. Only a fool would refuse. I tossed the book to him and told him this manual was special. Without my permission, he must never teach it to anyone else. He caught it like the most precious treasure in the world and read the title. 360 classic phrases for cursing enemies before battle. He froze. What kind of manual was this? It felt a bit improper. Then he opened the cover and read my introduction. I wrote that according to the art of war, attacking the enemy's mind is superior to attacking their walls. Mental warfare beats physical warfare. If you can enrage the enemy on the battlefield, making them lose their temper and charge recklessly, their fighting power drops by at least 30%. Therefore, mastering the art of battlefield insults is a world-class secret technique. Old Ghost's shifty eyes glowed. He whispered that this manual was truly powerful. He read the first few insults and was stunned by how vicious they were. He started reading aloud, completely absorbed. Lu Shu walked over curiously and asked what I had taught him. Old Ghost looked up and called Lu Shu a son of a dog. Lu Shu erupted in fury and pulled his blade, demanding a duel. Old Ghost kept going, adding more creative insults. Gao Fei stood nearby, completely confused, wondering what on earth my manual had done to Old Ghost's brain. I kept a perfectly serious face, as if none of it had anything to do with me. I pointed at a grand mountain rising ahead and asked Su Qi calmly whether that was Divine Dragon Mountain. While I led my convoy deeper into Huang Province, events were unfolding far away in the imperial capital that I would only learn about later. In the Emperor's study, 3 powerful men were arguing in front of my father. Li Jian, the Minister of War, stood with his hands clasped and made his case. He said that since the governor of Qing Province, Yi Fan, was dead, and the deputy commander Cao Bao was also dead, Qing Province had no leader. He recommended his adopted son Li Fei for the position of Qing Province governor. He said a man should not avoid recommending family if the person is truly capable. My father turned to the left prime minister, Sima Jian, and asked his opinion. Sima Jian thought for a moment and said it was not appropriate. Li Fei was too young and lacked the credentials. If he were appointed, the court officials would accuse Li Jian of favoritism and file complaints against him. To protect Li Jian from being attacked right after taking office, Sima Jian suggested they discuss other candidates. Li Jian glared at Sima Jian with open displeasure. At the same time, the right Prime Minister Chao Wei was breathing heavily, his eyes red with rage, staring at Sima Jian like he wanted to eat him alive. Chao Wei declared he wanted to formally accuse Sima Jian of killing his sons. Sima Jian showed no surprise at all. His face was perfectly calm. He pointed out that Chao Wei's sons, Chao Bao and Chao Ma, both died at the hands of the strategist school's assassin woman. Why would Chao Wei blame him? Chao Wei said darkly that he had received information suggesting the real killer was not the strategist woman, but someone else entirely. Sima Jian asked for evidence. Chao Wei admitted he had none, but he insisted it was Sima Jian's doing. When pressed further, Chao Wei said his 2 dead sons came to him in a dream last night and told him Sima Jian was responsible. As far as Chao Wei was concerned, whenever something went wrong in his life, Sima Jian was always behind it. Sima Jian bowed to my father and said Chao Wei was overwhelmed by grief, had lost his composure before the emperor, and was temporarily unfit to handle national affairs. He asked my father to make a ruling. Chao Wei exploded in anger, accusing Sima Jian of first killing his sons to provoke him, then using his emotional reaction as an excuse to strip him of his position. He collapsed to his knees before my father and cried that both his sons were dead and Sima Jian was the one who did it. My father's head was pounding. He turned to Li Jian and asked for his opinion. Li Jian said coldly that he was filing a complaint against Sima Jian for being domineering and kicking a colleague while he was down. He was also filing a complaint against Chao Wei for losing his composure before the emperor and being unfit to serve as prime minister. He declared that both prime ministers were useless. Instead of helping the emperor, they spent their time fighting like children. He suggested removing both of them and letting him handle everything alone, promising to make my father's life easy. My father was speechless. He reminded Li Jian that he was the Minister of War, not a censor whose job was to file complaints. Li Jian slapped his own forehead and agreed, then cheerfully said he would go find those annoying censors and have them file the complaints instead, so my father could have some peace. My father slammed his hand on the desk and told Li Jian to forget about ever becoming prime minister. Li Jian's face fell, and he asked about Li Fei's appointment as Qing province governor. My father rubbed his temples and said it was approved. Li Jian's expression instantly transformed into a beaming smile. He praised my father's wisdom and even said the 2 prime ministers were actually not bad and could be kept around for now. My father told him to get out. Sima Jian's mouth twitched. Chao Wei and Li Jian exchanged a meaningful look. Chao Wei's mood improved considerably. Their Crown Prince faction had lost a deputy commander and a cavalry captain, but gained a provincial governor. On balance, they came out ahead, though Li Jian clearly had his own calculations beneath the surface. Meanwhile, at the Eastern Palace, Boxes of silver were being carried out of the Crown Prince's residence and loaded onto carts. The Crown Prince stood at the gate, looking like his heart was being ripped out, eyes blazing with fury. He screamed about his silver, crying that my father was unfair for taking his money to build a palace for me. He cursed that I was about to die anyway and would never even live to set foot in it. He clutched his chest, remembering the loss of his secret treasury at Two Dragon Mountain, and swore I would never make it past Tianmen Mountain. He wanted my head. 2 carts loaded with silver rolled out through the capital's west gate. The Crown Prince collapsed to the ground. He was truly broke now, and it was all my fault. His concubine, Lady Chow, appeared and offered to get money from her family to keep them going. The Crown Prince was touched and said she was the only one who treated him well. Lady Chow sighed and cast a look full of meaning at the Crown Prince, saying it was a shame she could not bear him children. The Crown Prince's face turned scarlet with humiliation. His veins bulged and he howled at the sky, declaring his hatred for me was beyond reconciliation. Those 2 silver carts raced out of the capital. Besides 100,000 taels of silver, they also carried a royal robe that my mother, Consort Qin, had personally embroidered for me, stored in a fine sandalwood box. A squad of cavalry escorted the shipment, but hidden inside the carriage carrying the robe, a mysterious figure wrapped in black appeared like a ghost. None of the guards noticed. She opened the box and searched the robe again and again, but found nothing hidden inside. She was frustrated, convinced there had to be a secret, but she could not discover it. She believed that whatever was concealed would only reveal itself once the robe reached my hands. She decided to stay hidden in the carriage, meditate, and wait. Following the shipment would lead her straight to me. She also had a score to settle, vengeance for her fallen school members. Deep in the 100,000 mountains, at the White Fox Tribe's mountain settlement, the red-haired woman Dan knelt before their chieftain, a bald, green-eyed man. She begged him to avenge Lu Bai and their fallen warriors. The chieftain pulled her close, caring little about the dead. He was more interested in her. But Dan told him what she had learned. The one who killed their men was the new prince of Huang Province, the emperor's 9th son. The woman named Su Qi had deliberately led my convoy to Divine Dragon Mountain, a place that was easy to attack and hard to defend. They could surround and kill us there. The chieftain's eyes filled with murderous intent. He threw Dan onto the bed and promised that tomorrow he would unite the neighboring tribal settlements and wipe me out. At that same moment, I led my convoy to the foot of Divine Dragon Mountain. A magnificent peak rose before us like something out of a painting from another world. Divine Dragon Mountain stood about 1,000 meters tall. It did not have many steep cliffs, but was covered in ancient trees and had a handsome, graceful shape. What made it special was its location. It sat right at the point where 2 edges of the 100,000 mountains met, standing completely alone, separate from the main range. If you imagine the mountain chains as giant dragons, then Divine Dragon Mountain was the glowing pearl held between their jaws. In front of the mountain stretched a huge flat valley, wide enough that a horse could gallop for half an hour across it. A river cut through the middle, and on both sides the grass grew thick and green, full of life. Countless birds circled the mountain, their calls sharp and bright, filling the air with energy. But from higher up came the howling of wolves, carrying the savage spirit of the wild forest. Even from a distance, I could see things moving on the ancient tree branches, green shapes slithering and crawling. Venomous snakes, giant scorpions, enormous spiders. Divine Dragon Mountain was crawling with poisonous creatures. Our convoy stopped at the edge of the valley. Su Qi looked at the ancient trees and strange flowers covering the mountain with open admiration. She confirmed this was indeed Divine Dragon Mountain. Then Song Yi appeared from thin air and pulled a sheet of white paper from his sleeve. He reported that a detailed map of Divine Dragon Mountain and everything within a 10-mile radius had already been completed. I smiled warmly and thanked him for his hard work. He answered coldly that it was simply his duty, then vanished again. Su Qi was surprised. She realized I had sent scouts here long before we arrived to study the mountain's terrain. I laughed and told her that knowing your enemy and knowing yourself wins every battle. If I had blindly followed her advice and camped here without understanding the ground first, that would have been truly reckless. I reminded her that I had survived the journey all the way from the imperial capital. If I were a careless man, I would have died 1,000 times over. Su Qi's eyes shone with something like respect. She said she understood, and that my caution made her feel safe following me. I turned and began giving orders. I told Xiao Bai we would set up a military camp by the river tonight. I ordered Lu Shu and Gao Fei to make sure that only warriors at the third-rate level or above would stand guard tonight, since the situation on the mountain was still unclear. I called Song Jiao and told her to prepare extra anti-poison pills for swallowing and anti-venom herbs for applying on skin.